motion that we move executive session for legal and contractual discussion of Park West litigation up to the first item under H, that would be 8A in planning.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, amended motion, a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the ayes have it. Now we'll vote on the original. And now I need a motion.
Motion
on
to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
And the ayes have it. We have several public hearings, awards, and presentations. Ms. Farrell?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
I do have one public hearing this evening. This is the second required public hearing for the development agreement, proposed development to be known as Palmetto Fort. The development is proposed to consist of detached single-family residential uses, attached single-family residential uses, open space areas, a trail system, community farm, and other neighborhood amenity uses. Property is comprised of 209 acres, as is more fully described on your agenda, and this is the required second public hearing.
Thank you. I do have one person signed up to speak on this public hearing.
Pat Gillespie.
Pat, if you will come forward and state your name and address for the record, we'll give you 2 minutes to address the council. Welcome.
I'm Pat Gillespie. I live at 2182 Annie Laura Lane, and I've read the proposal of what the developer is offering for this development, and the money that he is offering, $1.5 million to complete Billy Swales. That would help us out a lot, and we need that money. So I'm here this evening to encourage you to consider it closely in the acceptance of what he's offering. It looks like a good development. It's progressive. He's not going to build all the houses at one time. It's going to be done over a 4-year period, from what I understand. And I think this would be good for our area over there. Part of the reason I live on Annie Laura Lane was the anticipation of getting Billy Swales completed and being able to enjoy the new park. We're not going to enjoy the new park until we get the road. So we need the road done. And I think it's an important thing that we should have. We spend a lot of money on parks and recreations here, but we have a beautiful parcel there that no one can use. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gillespie. I appreciate it. Mr. DeMore?
Mayor, if you would step forward and light up our judges Stobbs, Michelle, and Hesse, please, with your families. And if Mayor, you would go ahead and administer the oath of office.
Come on down. I see we have people that hold the Bibles for you. Nice to see y'all here this evening. Come on, everyone up. Everyone welcome. How are you? Good. How are you? I'm good. Nice to see you. I wondered who these handsome young men were all dressed up. Thank you. Nice to meet you too. All right, y'all are ready? Here we go. I do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified according to the Constitution of this state
I am duly qualified according to the Constitution of this state
to exercise the duties of municipal judge for the town of Mount Pleasant,
to exercise the duties of a municipal judge of the town of Mount Pleasant,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
that I will, to the best of my ability,
discharge those duties and will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
discharge those duties and will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of this state
of the United States.
Very good. I pledge to uphold the integrity and independence of this judiciary.
I pledge to uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary.
I pledge in the discharge of my duties
I pledge in the discharge of my duties
to treat all persons who enter the courtroom
to treat all persons who enter into the courtroom
with civility, fairness, and respect.
with civility, fairness, and respect.
I pledge to listen courteously,
I pledge to listen courteously,
sit impartially,
sit impartially,
act promptly,
act promptly,
and rule after careful and considerate deliberation.
and rule after careful and considerate deliberation.
I pledge to seek justice and justice alone.
I pledge to seek justice and justice alone.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Welcome. Thank you.
us up, please.
Come on, guys. Gotta get out of the light.
See you later.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, council members, ladies and gentlemen, if I could invite up our Planning and Development Director, Christiane Farrell, and as well as every member of the Planning and Development Department who's present, come forward, please.
That's a good-looking planning department. Y'all come on over. Y'all come on over.
Huh?
Okay, Mike.
Oh, you're talking. Okay, you're talking.
Hey, yeah, no, it can't. I'm messing with eyes.
And engagement. As many of you know, planning, building, zoning regulations can be very complicated and very complex. And so they've taken upon themselves to design an outreach program that has several components so that people can have a place to go, one-on-one discussions with our planners and everyone in our planning department to be able to understand better the complex regulations that exist. And so you probably, many of you know some of the programs that we have, Code for Lunch, Citizens Planning College, the annual report, the annual meet and greet, and the list goes on. And, you know, as far as being able to reach out and develop relationships that are so important to understanding and trust, they have really represented the town of Mount Pleasant very, very well, and I think this community very, very well. So it is my honor, I would say, maybe Christiane, if you could present this award to Mayor Page, and in recognition, and if you'd like to say a few words, that'd be great.
I did want to thank a couple of people. First of all, thank you all for your support. But we have a couple of people in the audience who helped us in supporting our application that we put forward. Actually, one of them just left, Mr. Stobbs, as a representative of Mount Pleasant Business Association. Mike Patterson with Trident Technical College, he's here. I think I saw Ms. Sullivan somewhere. There she is. She was a member of our first planning college, and then also Stuart Whiteside, who's participated in Code for Lunch. So we have a couple of members of the community that helped support our application that helped us to move forward with this award. And of course, I have to recognize all of these guys plus those others that couldn't make it, because all of these efforts take not only extra time during the day, but a lot of these things are extra time at night. And a lot of these guys already still have boards and commissions. So it's that much more time that they provide to try to give these opportunities back to our community. So I have to thank all of them as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, the congratulatory line.
There you go, buddy. Thank you. Good job. Thank you.
We go then.
Councilman Smith, if you please lead us in the proclamation for prescription drug awareness.
Please, I would. Thank you, Eric. And while I'm making my way over here, would you please join me up front here, Jason, please, Nancy, Mary Van, Cindy, and Rosalind. Jason is from the Charleston DEA. Y'all join me right up here up front, please, right next to me. And we have some volunteers here with the beautiful young ladies. This is an honor to stand here and present this proclamation on behalf of Mayor Page and all of my fellow council members. And the proclamation reads, whereas in April 2016, the Drug Enforcement Administration and other agencies nationwide collected 893,498 pounds or 447 tons of unwanted or leftover medicines. And whereas pharmaceutical drugs can be just as dangerous as street drugs when taken without a prescription or a doctor's supervision, and on average, 129 people in America die every day from an opiate drug overdose, with 40% of those deaths from legally prescribed medication. And whereas unused or expired prescription medication are a public safety issue leading to accidental poisoning, overdose, and abuse. And whereas the majority of teenagers abusing prescription drugs get them from family and friends and the home medicine cabinet. And whereas unused prescription drugs thrown in the trash can be retrieved and abused or illegally sold. And whereas the proper disposal of prescription drugs can play an essential role in keeping our water supply safe and not only helps keep our rivers and our streams free and potentially hazardous elements, but teaches our children that protecting the environment is everyone's responsibility. And whereas on Saturday, October 22nd, 2016, the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, will conduct their 12th National Take Back Day, where citizens throughout the Low Country will be provided with a list of drop sites to bring their leftover or unwanted medications for proper disposal. This service is free and anonymous. Now, therefore, I, Mark Smith, on behalf of Linda Page, Mayor of the Town of Mount Pleasant, do hereby proclaim October 2016 Prescription Drug Awareness Month and encourage citizens to contact the DEA for proper disposal of their unwanted or leftover medications. Here to receive the proclamation and to share a word with us is a very near and dear friend to many of us here in the room, Miss Nancy Stedman Ship. Nancy, thank you, all of you volunteers, for your hard work. We know these are difficult times to be living in, but your courage to come forward and take a stand to make a difference is making a difference and honoring your loved ones. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Shipman. I want to thank the mayor and the council and our community for recognizing this. This is a subject that a lot of us are aware of and some of us aren't. So I challenge everyone to learn a little bit about it. This is a ripple effect. I'm seeing it in our towns and our schools. And this is our town. We own our children. We take ownership in that. We take ownership on one another, neighbors. We saw it with this hurricane that came. People that have never talked before across the street are talking. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you and make sure that you know that October 22nd is the National Prescription Take Back Day. It is important. We're going to be publishing the drop-off boxes where they're going to be located in the areas. And I really, really challenge you also to look in your parents' medicine cabinets. Look in your own medicine cabinets. Get rid of things we're not using, please. So thank you. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, council, ladies and gentlemen, Vincent Anderson is a signal technician with our transportation department. Been doing this for 11 years. I remember when he came on board. He's being recognized this month as our employee of the month for actions, although he worked very, very hard during this hurricane that just went by, actually for actions during Tropical Storm Hermine, which if you recall hit us the Friday before the Labor Day weekend. And so what had happened in short was that during that storm, windy, rainy conditions, and it ended up knocking out several of our traffic lights around town. What that means is you see blinking signals, malfunctioning signals, traffic signals turned the wrong way, light casings being moved. And so what happened was 19 times Vincent was called out away from his loved ones on a long Labor Day, what was supposed to be a long, enjoyable Labor Day weekend. And so he's being recognized tonight for that, but not just for that, because what makes this situation even more exceptional is that we have private contractors who we can deploy on scene in order to help fix many of these issues. But what happened was that Vincent had made the determination that he could be on scene quicker and have the problem resolved faster if he went out himself, instead of waiting for the private contractors to show up, be deployed, and show up and fix the problem. So he made the conscious decision to put the safety of who was driving on the road that day, safety of the citizens of Mount Pleasant, ahead of his own, which should have been a long weekend before. So for his extraordinary dedication, he's being recognized this month as our Employee of the Month.
We want you to smile.
Yeah, you gotta have to smile.
1, 2, 3, and one more. 1, 2, 3.
I know we have a long agenda, but I have two short announcements. We have Troop 59 here from Stella Maris. Will you guys stand up and get recognized?
All right.
I do understand there's a future mayor in the bunch. Which one's the future mayor? That was from a very brief conversation in the parking lot. I have one other thing I'd like to do tonight before we get into this very long agenda. I'd like every staff member who's present in the room to stand up, please. And I'd like to give every one of you a huge thank you and a hand of applause for all the hard work that went through to keep our town safe the last few days. It's so comforting to know you've got our back. It's awesome. You're welcome. Item number 6 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 13th, 2016 Town Council meeting and the September 2016 financial statement.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any changes, questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the ayes have it. Item number 7 is correspondence and public statements. I have several people signed up to speak.
Yes, Joe Bustos. Thank you.
Mark, Mayor, council members, y'all saw Councilman Owens throw this award at me.
I would hit you if I was.
I'm Joe Bustos, 649 King Street here in Mount Pleasant, and I'm speaking as a citizen tonight. First, what I want to do is tell you, I was caught out of town on vacation. Actually, I was out of the country when Hurricane Matthew came through. And watching the traffic on text, Facebook, all the communications, the police department, the fire department, everything that was done was magnificent. And I had absolutely no fear that our home back in Mount Pleasant, of course, with the exception of the storm. And for most of you who know me, I don't gush with compliments very often. But I want to thank our town administrator and certainly the staff personally as a citizen for all the work that was done and all the safeguards that were taken. And from my wife and I as citizens, I just want you to know we really appreciate it. And thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
William Hamilton.
Could we have Mr. Fabricio Rodriguez over for me? It might shorten things up.
Thank you.
Good evening. Council, I appreciate your time and your attention. My name is Fabricio Rodriguez. I'm the National Executive Director of Americans for Transit. I'm really excited about the opportunity the citizens of Charleston have to pass a referendum to improve transit. That's going to improve a lot of people's lives, help them get to jobs and opportunities around the city. Shortly, I'm going to redeploy all my staff folks that are working in Indianapolis and Sacramento to come here to Charleston and to reach out to your voters, meet a lot of good people, make some friends, and hopefully get you some better transit. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabricio.
I'm going to try to be short because you have a long agenda. I remind the members of this council that people told us we couldn't make transit work here. We tripled the number of people who rode the bus. They said, well, it's really hard to build bus shelters. We built the most beautiful shelters in the state of South Carolina. Now, with 2 other cities, with new mayors, and with their own struggles, it's up to us to lead the community. You need to know that the campaign to pass this referendum for public transit is based in Mount Pleasant. It operates out of my house and some other locations, and most of the people running it are from Mount Pleasant. With that in mind, I come to ask you for favors. Well, first, of course, we need people's votes. If we don't do something like this, not only will we not get better public transit and the additional roads and green space, we'll be facing gridlock. And gridlock is why people come down here angry, why we don't pay attention to culture, to our parks. We're obsessed with cars, we drown in cars, we drown in traffic. We've got to clear it so we can get back to being a town for each other and our kids. We need money, frankly. Fabricio is being paid for by the national organization, but Nicholas, wait, Nicholas. Nicholas is currently being paid out of my pocket because we couldn't raise any money last week during the hurricane, so if you want to write us checks, that would be really cool. And finally, of course, we've got a business who can give us some food or some door prizes. We have got a lot of volunteers to reward and keep motivated. But these people have worked incredibly hard. Our campaign is back online and slamming tonight. We got back from, we took everybody to Asheville over the weekend, and we got back in one piece and we're going to work. And I wanted to show you the image, poster image for our campaign. That is the best friend of Charleston, a reminder that our area was once a pioneering leader in public transportation. Beside it is a modern BRT bus that can carry 125 people in the same colors as the best friend of Charleston. But there are 2 things there that are particularly relevant to here, and with this I close. In the back is the Ravenel Bridge, the great monument that joins our town to the old city of Charleston, and behind that the rising sun, because in the county of Charleston, progress comes from the east, Your Honor. It comes from the town of Mount Pleasant.
Thank you.
Mark Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. I can assure you that Joe Bustos and I did not coordinate speaking tonight, but I also, Mark Smith, 2716 Canebrake Lane, come before you to speak as a private citizen, offering my congratulations and thank you to everyone as well, to the town and our leadership. But I did bring also 2 pictures I want to share with you very quickly this evening. I'm speaking on behalf of a citizen as well as a member of the Mount Pleasant business community. Pictured on the screen now is a picture of my funeral home located on Rifle Range Road. On the bottom picture you can see a road to the left. It's part of our road going into the rear parking lot. To the left of that road is a ditch. When you look at the picture above it, you can see that during the storm, this is shortly after the storm, a picture that was sent to me. You can see the significant amount of flooding that happened. The picture on the bottom was taken 2 days later. Our system works very, very well, Madam Mayor. My understanding is there were 62 pump stations at Mount Pleasant Waterworks that were without power. 62 pump stations without power during this storm. Several of them for an extended period of time. On the bottom is my residence in Rivertown. On the bottom picture, you can see where the hole on 16th, the pond usually is, in the bottom left picture. You can see on the top picture through my screen where I was safely staying inside of my house as instructed. I took the picture, sorry for it being fuzzy, but you can see the flooding that happened in Rivertown. Flooding issues, storm water issues are not isolated to one area of town, Mayor. As a small business owner and a resident, I ask us to continue to focus on all of our town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all we have signed up to speak under correspondence and public statements. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak to this audience, this council tonight? Thank you very much. Item number 8, under planning new business, we had an amended agenda. Mr. Bustos?
I'll make a second motion that we go into executive session for legal, a discussion of the Park West Town of Mount Pleasant legal litigation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session for discussion of Park West versus Town of Mount Pleasant. We are in executive session. We'll be back in hopefully just a few minutes.
Did we vote?
Oh, all in favor? Sorry. Opposed? Jumping the gun. Yeah, I'm on the wrong place. Thank you very much. We are out of executive session. No action was taken. We'll move forward with new business. Moving along under planning, first reading of an ordinance to provide a moratorium on certain multifamily structures. Ms. Carroll?
Yes, ma'am. This was placed on the agenda, I think in light of the fact that the moratorium that was approved back in April for 180 days has reached that point. And so I think that at this point in time, staff needs direction, or we've got, Mr. Pagarini may need to speak up a little bit more here, but do have an ordinance prepared if there were some different desire of council.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop?
Yes, ma'am. You know, we are still waiting for the affordable housing. We're still waiting for some of the impact fee discussions, and right now I'd like to go to, or recommend, make a motion that we continue the moratorium until January to give those different groups, bodies, time to finish their work and bring it back to us. So I know that's not, thank you, that's not 180 days, it's only 90 days. But my hope is that certainly they should be finished by 90 days.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Mr. Carey?
Christiane, can you bring us up to date on the permits in place for multifamily?
Yes,
At one point, it was 6,000 units, I think.
Well, I've got a slide that I've updated from what we showed you in April.
Okay.
This was the same slide that was presented to you all in April. The only thing that I did on this was kind of update the status of all the different multifamily developments that we reviewed at that point in time that were already vested and approved. And so at the time in April, what was under construction were these here. The green now indicates that these have either received their certificate of occupancy or they are pretty much substantially complete and will be receiving their CO in the very near future. These were under site development. However, that was an error on my part. That really should have probably been up here in that category. So it's already received its CO. So at this point in time, these are actually under construction. That's what the purple indicates. And then finally, anything that's in blue, the Haven Phase 2, one of the two complexes at Carolina Park, and then the Boulevard Phase 2 are all in site review. So we anticipate those moving forward for permit review. So the only things that are still sitting out there that have not moved forward is the balance, the 573 minus the 324, whatever that number is, the balance of Bridgeside, and then the other half of the Carolina Park. So that's kind of an update of what's happened over the past 6 months.
So where did the 6,000 number come into play?
That's something different. That is a spreadsheet that we maintain on the planning department's website that is approved projects that can include everything. Single-family residential townhomes, like all of Carolina Park, for example. So this one is more in keeping with.
So this just isolates multifamily?
That are already approved, that are already vested. So this is just an update to the slide that y'all saw back then.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Christiane, what was the most recent date of an applicant for multifamily that you may recall?
Out of these, I mean, we haven't had any during the 6-month time frame for apartments. I do want to be clear on that, because when we went through this moratorium, we were discussing apartment complexes. And so we have had some things that are like in a horizontal property regime or the townhome type development. Those still have gone forward, but we haven't had any apartment applications. So if you're asking me out of these, which is the most recent, you you all really didn't have to see it, but the most recent thing that we probably received would be, well, one of these three, right here. One of the complexes moving forward in Carolina Park, and then the paper phase 2, which that's in Central Mount Pleasant.
Thank you.
Mr. Haney?
If I remember from the discussion we had in April, that amounted, if you added all that up, it was 2,200.
Yeah, well, I added everything up again, in a different way, for you, just so you can kind of see what's happening with the way it's all been color-coded, sort of. So everything that's in the green, and that's the received the CO, or is substantially complete, is 711 units. Let's see, we've got, in the next category is under construction, we've got 548. And then finally in the blue is 525. So if you take all those together, that's 1,784. So out of the number that you would have been referencing, that's obviously the balance here and the balance here makes up that difference.
They are approved, right?
Yes, that has an approved plan development, so they can move forward with that. We just haven't seen any submittals for that balance of that number. And then this is part of the Carolina Park Development Agreement. So yes, that could move forward as well.
Okay. And if I remember correctly, in the breakdown that we get every year of the type of housing we have in our community, we had about 9,500. I don't know if it was apartments or multifamily total. I thought it was apartments. It might include
That
horizontal
probably
regime.
included condominiums as well.
Okay. So if that number includes condominiums, then the number of apartments is somewhere less than 9,500, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so here we have 2,000 and something approved under construction or in site development. So Mount Pleasant's been around since the 1700s, and we've got 25% of the entire multifamily market that it's taken 200 years to build on this board right now. And so I don't think that we in any way are closing ourselves for business. I don't think we're in any way hurting the multifamily market. In fact, if anybody's been at this longer than I have, tell me when we've seen this type of influx of one type of housing in these numbers in our history, and how that impact worked out for us, and how we know that we can handle all that, because I'm not sure we can. And so I go back to Mr. Bustos' point. We have the Affordable Housing Task Force that we've asked to help us incorporate affordable housing. Obviously, if we open this back up, people who apply will not have to do that. And we also have paid, what, $75,000, Mr. Moore, for this impact fee assessment. We've got that coming in, and it just makes all the sense in the world to extend this to January.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. Yes, Mr. Bustos?
And I need to amend my motion for that to be first reading, since this is an ordinance, a numbered ordinance.
I'll amend my second.
So we have an amended motion, amended second. I want to thank you for your points, Mr. Haney. We really haven't had any multifamily development, and I think it's market-driven. I think we've seen that in the past. What is our percentage now, Ms. Farrell, of how many units? We try to stay about a 30-70 mix. The market obviously controls that. And of course, affordable housing, you would assume, although I try not to make assumptions, that perhaps people who need affordable housing are not in the market to purchase and may be tenants, maybe renters. So can you tell me what the percentages now we are?
Well, we have numbers to present in a couple of different ways. If you would consider just those things that are built and under construction, our ratio of single family to multifamily, with the multifamily including the condominiums, is 72% to 27.8, so almost 28%. That's our what's on the ground and under construction as of the end of August. If we take in all approved units that we have in the town, so for example, like all of Carolina Park that's not built, doesn't change a whole lot. It's 73.22 to 26.78. We also present these numbers to you all on a annual basis. And at this point in time, through the end of August, we did have some apartment complexes. This is permitted numbers. Obviously, some apartment complexes permitted, and so at this point in time for this year, through the end of August, we are at a 51% to a 49% ratio.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And the reason I ask those questions is, Mr. Bustos, while I very much agree with you that we need to, I'm eager to hear what the Affordable Housing Task Force comes up with, and I'm certainly very eager to find out what the impact study results are. I won't support a moratorium because I believe the market does a pretty good job of controlling the market. So anyone else, comments, questions? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Me. Three noes.
Mr. Owens, Mayor Page, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Garch, Mayor Page.
First reading ordinance number 16101, an ordinance to provide for a moratorium on certain multifamily structures.
All right, item number 2 is the first reading on an ordinance to rezone a piece of property in North Point, across the street from Page Steve's Market.
Yes. The properties in North Point are all currently zoned plan development. However, there is not a corresponding ordinance with that plan development. We've received some inquiries lately with some folks that have wanted to do some additions to their homes. You all saw a commercial rezoning kind of earlier in this year, so this one's a residential rezoning. What this does for the property owner is establishes definitive setbacks, really,
Move
for
for
them.
approval. Second.
And
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any other questions or comments from Ms. Farrell?
I'd like to hear her finish, if that's okay.
Yes.
I think for the benefit of the audience as well.
So this request is to rezone from plan development to R4, which is a compatible zoning district with the recommended land use for the property. We do expect more to come. We've got another one for next month, so you will start, I think, to see some folks in North Point looking to rezone to what I think is probably the most compatible zoning district with the way the property is already developed. And that's been recommended for approval by commission and committee.
Can you just, like I say, for the benefit of the public, tell us what can be built there with this new zoning change?
The only thing that can go there is a single-family house on this particular piece of property.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. A question, Mr. Brenner?
Just a comment, Mayor. I think there was a comment made at the committee meeting about perhaps council taking a larger view of this neighborhood instead of doing it parcel by parcel, perhaps taking some steps to rezone the whole neighborhood so there's consistency going forward. Has there been any interest in the neighborhood, Christiane, about doing that you've heard?
We have discussed this with a few folks, but we don't seem to have gotten anywhere with the neighborhood as a whole. I know Ms. Sims has actually met with the neighborhood in the past, as well as Mr. DeMora. I mean, it's something we can try to reach out to them again a little more definitively and ask if this is something they would like to pursue and do it all at once rather than individually.
I think that's a good approach. That outreach, since y'all are so good at outreach now, I think that'd be a great thing to do, because I think what we want to avoid here is having inconsistency within this neighborhood. And I think everyone would appreciate that. So that may be something we look at in the future as a council. But for tonight, we'll just focus on this one parcel.
Bob, I think you bring up a great point. I like a comprehensive view of things. I don't believe this neighborhood has an HOA, so it could be problematic. This is very similar to what we saw in the Old Village, and we have been seeing in the Old Village for several years, people who wanted to go to R2. It's mostly a setback issue. Perhaps they want to put on a porch, perhaps they want to put on an addition, and the setbacks between R1 and R2 are different. So, you know, we're seeing those requests, so I think it'd be very similar. Any other comments or questions from Ms. Farrell? We have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Lane?
Yes, this is a quarter-acre tract of land. You have a request for annexation, and I'll follow that with a zoning request. But Planning Committee has recommended annexation.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
First reading, ordinance number 16088, an ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately quarter-acre tract of land located at 1718 Buchanan Lane, identified by TMS number 55800000914, and depicted as Lot B2A on a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC office in Book DF, page 877.
This next item, number 4, is that same property request for rezoning.
Yes, so there's two parts to this request. First of all, they have requested area-wide business zoning. And then this property falls within the area identified as the Hungry Knack Boulevard Venning Road Overlay District, so they have requested to be incorporated into that district as well. They already own a business that does repair work across the street, and so the purpose of this is storage for their business, and has been recommended for approval by the commission as well as the committee.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
A quick question. Is that road paved all the way through now, Buchanan?
I don't know how far it goes back. I'm not sure.
Just something for us to pay attention to as we annex properties
Yes, sir.
on a dirt road. First reading, ordinance number 16089, an ordinance to zone AB, area-wide business district, and HNBVROD, Hungry Neck Boulevard, Venning Road Overlay District, and approximately a quarter-acre tract of land located at 1718 Buchanan Lane, identified by TMS number 55800000914, and depicted as Lot B2A in a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC office in Book DF, page 877.
Item number 5 is the first reading of a 12.44 acre tract on Old Georgetown Road annexation.
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for annexation. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
First reading, ordinance number 16090, an ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately 12.44 acre tract of land comprised of 3 parcels located on Old Georgetown Road, identified by TMS numbers 57800000007, 57800000011, 57800000014, and depicted on a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC office in Book CB, page 61, and Book S15, page 6, and Deed Book B378, page 1.
Item number 6 is the same piece of property. This is the zoning.
Yes, corresponding, the zoning request for those parcels. The requested zoning is plan development, conservation design. They have not proposed to amend the comprehensive plan, so the density that will be allowed is 3 units per acre. Plan development conservation design requires a minimum of 25% open space, which is shown on the plan. If we could go to that real quickly. There we go. Everything that's highlighted in green is the open space areas, so you can see the lots that are shown on the plan. A couple of things that we should cover on this particular application. First of all, as part of the plan development, they have the applicant has proposed to dedicate land for future Long Point Road extension right here. It's about 1.5 acres. And so that is included within the plan development. Staff did have a recommendation that that should be accomplished with final plat of the property. A couple of other things to note that were a result of staff comments as well as the Planning Commission and Planning Committee process. We had some concerns with these 2 lots that were shown up here. Mainly is with respect to access straight onto this future Long Point Road. And as ultimately through Planning Commission recommendations, it was recommended that those lots be removed. And the applicant has agreed and concurred with that. Another thing to note is this last lot right here, lot 30, can't actually be platted until the road is accomplished because they're going to need to have a cul-de-sac right here. And that's also specified within the plan development. So initially it would be 29 lots, and then eventually it could be 30 lots. A few other things to note that came about as conditions or recommendations for conditions is to install a raised crosswalk at mid-block for this particular road with concerns regarding cut-through for it. And then finally, staff had some concerns, and you've heard this from planning staff before, when it comes to plan development conservation design, the design should represent such. And so a stand-up curb and gutter and those sorts of details are not really in keeping with that type of plan development. And so through the Planning Commission's recommendations, which were also included for Planning Committee, it was agreed that staff would work with the applicant to get some other sort of curb and drainage system in there that could be presented through the sketch plan, ultimately reviewed by the Planning Commission. And so with all of those things included, there is a recommendation for approval. The Planning Commission was by a vote of 5-3, and then the committee, had one member absent, was unanimous, 3-0 for recommendation approval with the conditions that I've just specified. And I think that I've got a slide that outlines those next, just in case. That's everything that I just reviewed from the plan.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. Mr. Santos?
Christiane, this piece of property now, it will be incorporated in the Sweetgrass Basket Overlay District, correct?
Yes, that, yeah, I left that out. That was one of the recommendations as well.
Good,
Yes.
very important.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Garrett?
Christiane, lots 31 and 32, if they're not acceptable to this subdivision, it was mentioned in committee that they could be donated to Habitat, but would they be acceptable to any development at all?
Our concern, whether it was for the purposes of affordable housing or habitat or something of that nature, was still the same. It's still going to be driveways accessing on
Right.
to this roadway. And based on representations by the applicant during the meeting, they were okay with that. I think that they just offered that is something they were willing to do, but we still have the concern with the driveway access.
So what becomes of those two lots?
They're open space, correct? Open space, yes.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move for approval of this item to include the language from the recommendation from the Planning Commission, the language from the Planning Committee, and on all the conditions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any other questions or comments?
Question.
Mr. Haney?
Did I hear you correctly? There are no amendments to the comprehensive plan with this, and it is in the spirit and the keeping of the Sweetgrass overlay.
So the maximum density allowed is in community conservation is 3 units per acre. This will be less than that. And then the Sweetgrass Basket Overlay District specifically provides that you can do a conservation design within the boundaries of that district. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. I do have someone signed up to speak.
Russ Seaman?
We're here to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Seaman? I have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
First reading ordinance number 16091, an ordinance to zone PDCD Plan Development Conservation Design District, an approximately 12.44 acre tract of land comprised of 3 parcels located on Old Georgetown Road, identified by TMS numbers 57800000007, 57800000011, and 57800000014, and depicted on the plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book CB, page 61, Book S15, page 6, and Deed Book B, 378, page 1.
Thank you. Item number 7, 8, and 9 all pertain to a piece of property at North Palmetto Fort. Item number 7 is the annexation of that property.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for annexation. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
First reading ordinance number 16068, an ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately 209.651 acre tract of land comprised of 2 parcels located at North Palmetto Fort Drive and North Lakeshore Drive, known as Palmetto Fort Development, identified by TMS numbers 57700000001 and 57700000315, and depicted on the plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book Q, page 155, and Book L16, page 201.
Item number 8 is the first reading of the zoning on that particular piece of property. Ms. Farrell?
The zoning that's been requested is cultural landscape, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which has a land use recommendation also of cultural landscape. This allows for 3 units per acre. Cultural landscape also allows for cluster design. So this is not a planned development. This is straight zoning. But in order to be allowed to do the cluster, they do have to have at least 25% open space. The plan that they've submitted with their impact assessment does demonstrate and exceed the requirement of 25% open space. And so that's been recommended for approval, the zoning has, by both the planning commission as well as the planning committee.
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
First reading, ordinance number 16069, an ordinance to zone CL Cultural Landscape District in approximately 209.651 acre tract of land comprised of two parcels located at North Palmetto Fort Drive and North Lakeshore Drive, known as Palmetto Fort Development, identified by TMS numbers 57700000001 and 57700000315, and depicted on a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book Q, page 155, and Book L16, page 201.
Thank you. Item number 9 is the impact assessment conceptual plan for that property.
Yes, we reviewed this last month as well as the development agreement, and all items, the annexation, the zoning, impact assessment, and development agreement are all sent back to committee. But there was obviously discussion regarding the impact assessment and conceptual plan at the planning committee. So what we have up on the screen is an updated conceptual plan that addresses a lot of the comments that came from staff, from the community, from the public hearings, from the planning commission. And what I'm going to do is we can flip back to this, but I've got a slide that you might need to keep going, Lauren. It's a couple of slides later. It's going to list out. There we go. So what have we seen that has been changed since the last time that you saw this? And there were some things that were clouded, and we can go back to that map if we need to. There was an elimination of an access to Ruffin Road, and that was per the Planning Commission's recommendation. There's been a note added to the conceptual plan that there would be right-of-way needed from the town and PRC to accomplish the roundabout and the public trail at Rifle Range. We had requested this clarification. The conceptual plan, you'll see now the trails have been color-coded so that it is very clear what is public and what is private. In addition to that, it has been offered that the public trails, they'll be open to the public, but they will still be owned and maintained by the developers and the HOA. The plan shows an increase in setbacks on North Lake Shore because there are some lots that will actually front onto North Lake Shore. And so that came as a result of requests from those neighbors, and so the developer has presented that on the plan. Staff had concern about the ratio. There's a ratio in the cultural landscape when you do a cluster development about how many townhomes you can have, and so what they did in order to address our comment is they reduced the total number of townhomes to 50. When they did that, they had to adjust the transportation trips, and so that's what that first bullet explains. And regarding transportation, also with this, the neighborhood had some concerns about the installation of a turn lane at 6 Mile and Rifle Range, and so an updated letter is provided within the transportation section of the impact assessment that offers instead that $200,000 would be given to the town, and it states that it would be specifically used in that area of 6 Mile and Rifle Range for something other than the turn lane improvement. And then again, the note was added regarding the right-of-way needed. And so all of these things have been incorporated into the impact assessment and conceptual plan here you've got a clean document that addresses all the comments that we've had through the process, and this was recommended for approval by the planning committee with the changes. And we can go back to the map if you need to see that.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell.
Move for approval. Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Mr. Bustos?
I have the total number of trips. I know before it went back, it was 3,100 trips per day. What is it now?
3,060.
3,060. All right, so it went down.
That's daily trips.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Daily trips.
You good, Mr. Bustos?
Yep.
Mr.
Yes,
Haney?
ma'am.
Thank you. Fellow members of the Transportation Committee, do you remember a motion, I believe it passed? I'm sorry that in the commotion of this week, I haven't had time to look back over those minutes. that we were going to not only reassess our impact fees, but also our, what triggers impact assessments. Mr. Pettigrew, I think.
Sir, that was.
Okay, that passed and okay, and that passed. Okay, good. I thought it had passed. My hesitancy with this is that we are proceeding on an impact assessment. We're proceeding while we are totally looking for the sake of the taxpayers of our town at what triggers certain impact assessments, how we evaluate those, and then what the fees connected with those are. And while I know that this development is probably, you know, had something like this come along 20 years ago, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the conflict and problems we have in this town. And I certainly commend the developer for working with neighbors and everybody. I have great concerns about the impact of this. One, on our citizens, and two, on approving such a big development, putting 3,000 cars a day on Rifle Range Road, which my family and I travel every day, while we are in the process of taking a look at everything we do that has the word impact on it, whether it's the fee or the triggers. And I would just ask if maybe we could maybe not pass this tonight, maybe defer this. I know we don't have a motion to defer, but if we're not going to defer it, I would have to plan to vote no.
Thank you for that, Mr. Henning. I do have a motion and a second for approval. Anyone else comments? I do have a speaker signed up.
George Freeman.
Welcome, Mr. Freeman.
Hello, I'm real quick tonight.
Oh, good. You're more than welcome to take your full 2 minutes.
George Freeman, 1450 Bowman Road. I'm just here tonight to thank the developer and council for making that change with the right turn lane in the neighborhood. And I'd like to follow up at the planning committee meeting. Mr. Gorge made a comment about where that $200,000 should be spent, and I believe the community and the cage owners in this organization would be in agreement with the sidewalk being built from 6 Mile Road to that Rifle Range Road. That would greatly improve the community's access to that park when it's built. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Any other comments or questions from council? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
2 noes.
Who was the other one? I'm sorry.
Mr. Bustos? Item number 10 is the first reading of that same piece of property. This is the development agreement.
One more. No, one more back. I did the same thing with the development agreement, so that you can see what has changed since the last time that you saw it. And then I've got a final slide that includes kind of recommendations to go along with this. I had to break this up into 2 slides so you can see what changes have occurred. Total number of townhomes, I've already mentioned this, with the impact assessment was updated to provide that limit of a total of 50. This updated development agreement introduces a voluntary allocation program within it. There is clarification that the park site would be improved and dedicated to the town prior to issuance of the first CO. There's clarification regarding the ownership and maintenance of the public trail. That would be to the HOA, although there will be a public easement, access easement established, and that public trail has been clearly identified on that plan that I had on the screen earlier. Couple of things, and we'll come back into some of these with the recommendation. Development agreement does include language regarding the roundabout on Rifle Range, but it suggests that either the developer will construct or that the developer would provide the necessary funds to the town. The staff continues to recommend that the construction of the roundabout should be the responsibility of the developer and by the developer. The development agreement does not include a reference to the property belonging to the town and PRC that would likely be needed to construct the roundabout, and so we do feel that this should be added. It has been clarified within the impact assessment. In addition, it should be clarified within the development agreement. Developer will improve North Palmetto Fort and North Lake Shore. Okay, a couple of other changes. The updated development agreement includes that the developer will install traffic calming measures on North Palmetto Fort. We did request a few more specifics, some examples. This is something that staff can work through if desired. Staff has asked a couple of times, there's a proposal in there to give $3,000 to the property owners along McManus and North Palmetto Fort for fencing and landscaping. Staff continues to recommend removal of this condition because it seems that this should be a private matter, not a matter for the town of Mount Pleasant. The revised development agreement proposes to pay the $200,000 for the improvements to rifle range and 6 Mile. Staff's suggestion is the language that was in the letter within the impact assessment probably is appropriate and most fitting with the intent to provide for improvements in the general area as opposed to turn lanes, so perhaps the same language could be used. The updated development agreement does propose a contribution of $1.5 million specifically to be used for construction of the road to Rifle Range, connect Rifle Range to Bleasville Parkway. And then finally, that all transportation improvements and funds have to be paid by final plat of phase 1. So recommendations on the next slide. These are the recommendations that came out of committee. If there is a voluntary allocation program, there was a little bit of an inconsistency with how the impact assessment phasing plan is laid out. So if we do move forward with the development agreement, and which includes the voluntary allocation program, my recommendation would be that we just, for the record, that supersedes the phasing plan within the impact assessment, the voluntary allocation program would. There was another sentence that staff wanted removed. It says something about the development agreement can override any zoning or land development regulations. The development agreement does not propose to change any zoning or land development regulations, but it would be our preference that that statement be removed. Clarify that the developer is responsible for construction of the roundabout is already explained. We need to add the reference that they may need some property from the town PRC to accomplish the roundabout. Traffic calming, we've already spoken about that. Remove the language about the $300,000 to the property owners, it's a private matter. Update the language regarding the $200,000 to be used in that general area. And then finally, for the NSYNC adaptive install, that make it clear that that shall be performed by the developer rather than being accomplished by them funding the contribution to the town. So those were all the things that were outlined with planning committee and recommended for approval as noted. So what we would need, if you all were going to proceed with this, is an updated development agreement that incorporates these modifications.
I'll move to defer.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to defer.
What was the second, I'm sorry?
Mr. Busto? I have
When
speakers.
is that going to be included if it's not deferred?
Well, you have a couple of different options. You could defer and wait for it to be modified. Your other option would be to go ahead and proceed with first reading and exchange out the exhibit for final reading, because the development agreement's an exhibit. That's council's decision.
Amendments would be made at final reading for our ordinances, so that'd be the second option that Christie mentioned.
So I have a motion, a second for deferral. Is there any other, before I open it up to my speaker, is there any other questions or comments from council? Mr. Carrier?
Can you go back one slide and clarify the 1.5 million going towards construction to connect Rifle Range Road to Billy Swales? Is that the roundabout? Is that what we're talking about?
No, sir. No, sir, this is in addition to the roundabout.
In addition to the roundabout?
Yes, sir. This will be to be contributed towards creating that connection.
Okay. And then the roundabout is separate from that and in addition to?
Yes, sir. So the developer, if we could go back to maybe the conceptual plan that was up there.
It's in there. Let me finish with him,
actually, that
Mr.
would be
Bustos
important.
first.
We can show you a little bit. Brad, right here, correct?
Right.
Extending from here. So this is the roundabout that the developer would be responsible for. This, what would be showing on the conceptual plan is the road also accessing into the site that they're calling Cultivation Lane. So the developer would build Cultivation Lane, build the roundabout, and then contribute 1.5 million for some sort of connection up in this general area.
And where does the 200,000 come in?
That's different. That 200,000 was instead of creating the turn lane improvements at the intersection of 6 Mile and Rifle Range, 200,000 would be paid to the town prior to final plat, and the town would in turn be able to use those funds for improvements in those general areas, as Mr. Garge suggested and Mr. Freeman suggested. Perhaps one of those options could be sidewalk improvements instead, right there in the 6 Mile.
So the developer's going to pay $3.2 million to us for infrastructure improvement,
That's what that adds up to.
plus impact fees, as Mr. Brimmer's.
Yes, the impact fees are about, to the town, are about $550,000. And then in addition to these improvements that have been explained.
So when have we had a developer pay upwards of $3.5 million to get a development approved? When? Huh? I'm just asking.
I mean, perhaps Carolina Park would be, I don't know the numbers for Carolina Park, I don't remember them off the top of my head, but.
Thank you.
Mr. Carey, thank you. Mr. Bustos, I believe you had a comment or a question?
Well, I had a question. The road to Billy Swales Parkway, how much, do we have any idea how much that is going to cost to?
We have an estimate.
The estimate that we have in our CIP is $9.3 million.
Right, 9.3.
But that's the entire road from US 17 to Rifle Range. It's an all-inclusive cost, including right-of-way assumptions that we may get dedicated, and it also includes some assumed improvements on Rifle Range. So it's the whole project.
Okay, that goes all the way over to Highway 17.
Yes, sir. Rifle Range to 17.
So,
Joe, if I may.
And I believe that
make
includes
sure.
the realignment of Long Point Road to take that, to not be, it matches it up, correct, Brad?
Yeah, there's two phases to the project. There's a realignment portion through Boone Hall down to kind of the entrance to the Christ Church entrance. And then phase 2 is from that point over to Rifle Range Road.
okay,
Well, that's what I call the Long Point Road extension.
okay. What kind of timeline do we have on that?
We don't have funding dedicated from the town at this point for that road.
Eric, what would happen to the $1.5 million until we wait to accumulate $9.3 million to make that connection?
I think what we would do, sir, is if this was approved, we would go ahead and ask that you allow us to begin design of that portion of the project. Say from here to Billy Swales Boulevard, the perpendicular section. And then we would design it, have cost estimates, and then it will be up to you and council as to whether to wait or to match it with existing town funds to complete the project, the segment.
Okay, but we don't have any idea then for that segment from Rifle Range Road, which would be phase 2, I think I heard you say.
Yes,
So, even though we had $1.5 million to put towards it, even for design, that being phase 2, we would have to find money to design and build phase 1, which would be from 17 down to Billy Swales. And then one other question. I'm sorry, Paul, you had a question?
No, you keep going, I'm gonna follow you. I just wanted, when he said 9.8 for all of it, I wanted to make sure that he was telling everybody, aside from realigning it, it's also completely moving that intersection north about a quarter of a mile.
Yeah.
That entire intersection, that's included, that's all. But I'll go after you, I hope.
Yes, sir. And then the exemptions to any permit allocation or management decisions that may be made by the town, you had recommended that be removed? Is that what?
No,
is that-
sir. There was a statement in there that, go back to that slide. I didn't copy it in there verbatim. It's the wrong way, Lauren. Okay. Keep on. One more. Okay. Move language can override any zoning or land development regulations. Now, there is language that is still, that was one sentence that I had suggested be removed. There is still a sentence in there about not being subject to a building permit allocation. So it's kind of in a separate paragraph. And then they have in turn offered to create the voluntary allocation permit instead.
You know, in my mind, this is tying the town's hands going forward. The notion that impact fees have to be spent. That's not a windfall for the town. That's not money we get to do what we want with. That's money that has to be spent to mitigate all the impacts of this subdivision, 330 houses, I believe it is. The impact on the town of Mount Pleasant. It's also 1.5, which I think is very good to hear that from the developer. And, you know, that was done at Carolina Park, even neighborhoods, money was given to neighborhoods. But I think with that part being phase 2, as opposed to phase 1, and certainly $1.5 million is a lot of money, but it's nowhere close to $9.3 million that we have to have. And the bottom line is, for years, until we can accumulate that money and rezone that, Rifle Range Road and the people that live along Rifle Range Road will have to live with that. They're going to have to live with over 3,000 cars daily, and then if we decide that the impact is getting to be too much, then we, through this development agreement, are tying our own hands in what we can do in the future, which I think, you know, is not good management when you take things off the table that you can do. So I can't support this, and I think we'll find, even with the money that we'll get from impact fees, as I said, that's money that has to be spent to mitigate the impact of this subdivision. I've said it before, you know, if the developer wants to build this as quickly as possible, then he needs to build that road. Not contribute to it, he needs to build it. He's going to benefit from it. It's going to make his property more better to sell. It's going to improve it. It's just like putting a school in. This is, in my opinion, a half a loaf, and I think it should go back. And I think you need to work on this some. We're putting 300 houses right next to one that's got 600 and something in it. We're going to choke Rifle Range Road, and this is something that this. You know, the annexation, the zoning, I understand. I think it's okay, but this development agreement is not good. This is not good for the town. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Garch?
Joe, just real quick, your last comment there. Would you take it to understand that the part they're asking for the development agreement is simply to make sure that they have a certain amount of permits for each year for 5 years? That's the big nut for the development agreement. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Say that again?
The part about aside from the impacts and the money they're offering, and zoning and everything you just said, annexation, the development agreement zeroes in on them, rightfully so, seeking a certain amount of permits per year for 5 years.
Yeah.
That would be the biggest kicker, I would think. Anyway, because I understand what you're saying. I know we have people to speak, but we have a motion right now and a second to defer. I would like the applicant to come up here because I have a couple of questions that I think would weigh in on this motion that's been made. Because I'm not going to support this motion to defer, but I'd like to ask them. We heard Ms. Farrell say they need to submit to us finalized information. I want to make sure that they understand that, and then I have some questions from that based on their responses.
Thank you, Mr. Garson. I'd also like to make one point for Mr. Bustos. It is council that designates the phasing of road projects. It would be very easy for us to prioritize from Rifle Range Road to Billy Swales Parkway as phase 1 of that project. That would be a simple vote of council for us to change that phasing, and we already have funding for Billy Swales Parkway. So that part of the connection could be done, Joe, at the will of this council.
My question, guys, y'all understand, since the planning committee, that you have items, new items, and you need to address them. What's your plan on how you're going to address that?
All right, and I'm sorry that Mr. Bustos was not able to be at the planning committee last week, because we did have a good discussion on this point. And as we have done dozens of times, we listened to the staff's comments, and the motion which came out of the planning committee was to approve the development agreement with all staff comments. And we've done that dozens of times. And we, as the developer, agree 100% with all the comments, easily made. We would typically not make those final typed changes until after the first reading, because frankly, it doesn't pass. That's sort of the end of that. So we're in agreement with all the changes, happy to make them all. Just a couple of things to clarify though, as Mr. Garge pointed out, this agreement's only good for 5 years by statute. So while we have zoning and while we have a limited number of building permits that are available, we are going to spend all of the funds at day 1. The risk is totally on the developer then for the remainder of that time period. After the end of that, if things have changed in the town, if the town decides to impose moratoriums or eliminate construction altogether, we're totally at risk, and there's no guarantee of anything. All the money will have been spent. The other thing I think, and I'll let Stuart speak to this probably, but there is no degradation of service level on any of the traffic corridors, and that's clear in the impact assessment. So while we agree that there are additional trips being generated, the impacts that are being mitigated result in no further degradation of service. Again, we're in agreement with all the staff comments. We're perfectly happy to make those changes, but as we have done historically in this town, we would make those after we've had a successful first reading so that we are all on the absolute same page at final reading.
Yeah, and one thing, just follow up on Grace's comments on the traffic study. The traffic study with the no degradation beyond a level of service C was based on Billy Swales not even being constructed. So we're being ultra conservative in that matter. So if the Billy Swales goes in as funded with $1.5 million, we feel would cover the road from our roundabout to Billy Swales. Town comes out way ahead.
And I think that let's not get lost on the other things which are being provided to the town, because the roundabout connects to another road which we're building, which will be dedicated to the town, which provides another way on and off of Rifle Range, takes congestion away from that 6-mile intersection. But more importantly, it's going to provide a public walkway, which will eventually lead from the park all the way to the marsh, around the marsh, to the 7 acres that we're going to dedicate, which will become part of the existing Palmetto Fort Park, which will then dedicate to what you have already as part of the park, which will then essentially allow someone to walk from Rifle Range Road all the way down Cultivation, out to the marsh, around the marsh, through the public park, and back to their house without ever having to walk in the road, on the road, in a very nice, safe environment, all of which will be open to the public.
Mr. Garch.
Thank you, ma'am. After the planning committee, I had some thoughts learning about this 1.5 million and going towards this road, because Mr. Carey, as you know, and Will, we just had a recreation committee meeting where we talked about the park, and you went out to the meeting out at Lang, and like you said, you know, it's 10, 15 years out before we can start to do things here. I didn't count my chickens, but I looked at our lineup and our agenda tonight, and one we just approved a substantial amount of right-of-way for Long Point Road. Brad, I don't know how big of a right-of-way piece it is or the value from that piece. Is there any way you can throw a number at that? The value of that project that just received first reading, I know, with the 30 house?
I have no idea.
That's okay.
I think it's 80 feet wide and 600-700 feet. It is substantial.
$1 million? Anyway, where I'm going with this, and I would just like to look at some flexibility between first and second reading, provided we get there. If we don't, we don't. I wouldn't want, Mr. DeMore, you can help me, you probably know where I'm going with this. I wouldn't want to tie that 1.5 million to a road for a park that's 15 years out. our greatest need is to move that intersection and align it with Long Point Road. And if we just picked up $1 million worth of easement for it, we can add this to it. We can really get moving and at least come to Billy Swales Boulevard from that end for that money. So I just want to, I'm not saying I'm going to try to pin everybody down, but I'd like to have that either or option on that $1.5 million, that it not just go towards a road that's in a park, but go to Long Point Road Extension, whether it be phase 1 or phase 2. Does that make sense? You can absolutely do that. You'll be able to do it at your annual retreat in January. You can designate and fund whatever projects you like. Whether you choose it in the initial segment or the latter segment, I think it's still important that you grant us permission to begin design right away. So that way we start to develop the project a little more, so you have the best information available when it's time to make the decision. And Joe, I just finished. I too have concerns about Rifle Range Road, because I can't believe every time I look at, what's it called, Oyster Point or whatever, I'm glad my name's nowhere near that. But anyway, it happened. But to have that roundabout, I think will provide a wonderful, and the road that goes from the roundabout to a park road eventually. But that park's 10, 15 years out. We just picked up, gosh, with first reading $1 million on one project, we're getting 1.5 million. Guys, I mean, you know, yeah, I go to Christ Church, but it's Meals on Wheels and it's everything now. You can't turn left on 17 and go south. And we've got to get that intersection improved. Anyway, food for thought.
Thank you, Mr. Carrier.
I just want Paul to clarify what he was talking about when he talked about Long Point Road Extension and the connectivity there, because a lot of people don't understand. You jump from Rifle Range to Long Point Road, you know, there may be some gray area.
Sure, happy to do so. For the longest time, we've been discussing where Long Point Road now comes into 17, it's a dead end. If you go up a couple hundred feet, there's Old Georgetown Highway, which goes in and opens up for Christ Church, and a development we just proved in other developments. We looked at just taking Long Point Road and swinging it to the north a couple hundred feet to align it and making it a true intersection. And while we were doing that, we were talking about extending Hungry Neck, which runs through the middle to parallel Rifle Range Road and 17 to give us more north-south access, because we are so long and hampered by several things that really restrict our traffic flow. You've got 3 movements north and south, then you want to get a perpendicular road like we have done with other roads, whether it be Venning, whether it be 6 Mile, Hamlin, Porsche Bluff, so, and Bowman, of course. Now we can take this one and finish off the grid. So you move Long Point Road a couple hundred feet to the north, move the intersection to the north, pick up Long Point Road on the other side, on the east side of 17, and now run it to where Billy Swales Boulevard is being constructed between 6 Mile and Hamlin Road, which again is in the middle of 17 Rifle Range Road. Hope I didn't say that too fast. Only been talking about it for 15 years. A little excited.
Mr. Santos.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, just for the public's benefit as well. If this property was not annexed and developed into the town of Mount Pleasant, can you tell us how it could be developed in the county? What's the difference?
It's currently approved as planned development within Charleston County that has, I believe, 274 lots. 0 open space. It's just be full lots, full development, no dedication of open space required.
So in other words, we'd have the same amount of impacts from cars, the same amount of impacts in our schools, in the recreation department and all, but we would not have, you know, the $1.5 million and all the things that we have in this development agreement.
Plus the taxes as well.
Plus the taxes.
And I actually think you'd have a greater impact, Mr. Santos, simply because we are also making improvements with the roundabout, as well as the in-sync traffic light synchronization system. We're doing other things that may or may not be required by the county.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Haynes?
Thank you. First of all, we also have in the minutes from the, and y'all, I don't want to keep people standing up there if we're through.
Oh, they're fine. They're good.
Y'all sure? Okay.
Sure.
They look good up there.
It's a precarious position. I just want to remind everybody, we're talking about a motion to defer right now. Mr. Bremer, I just want to ask, you chair this committee, and I guess I was not able to attend, I'm not on the committee, but it concluded last Monday at what time? Late in the afternoon?
Yeah, it was about a 2-hour meeting or so.
Okay. So 4:30 in the afternoon?
3 o'clock.
Wasn't that late?
We
No,
started early.
earlier.
Okay, okay. So less than 24 hours later, Mr. Santos, you and I were sitting in that same room listening to the staff prepare for the hurricane. And so normally when something comes out of planning committee and we have all of these changes, the public and council has a week and a day to digest it, to discuss it, to call their council members. I certainly got calls on this today. I'm not even sure when our agenda got posted. I know it was posted in time to comply, but I mean, the storm hit on Friday. We had a mandatory evacuation on Wednesday. Okay. So I'm just going to ask the members of this council, if you want to pass something of this magnitude, with this kind of impact, with this kind of money, when we've had basically less than 24 normal working hours to digest it, for the public to take a look at it, when the agenda for this meeting went out in the midst of a mandatory evacuation, I don't think that's good business. I also don't think it's good business to take on something like this that involves impact fees when we know that our impact fees are getting ready to go up. We've paid $75,000 of taxpayers' money to have an assessment of that and to comply with state law. And I dare say, I think if the developer of this was getting ready to sell homes and his cost accountant said, we're getting ready to reassess our costs and they're going up, I don't think the developer would contract to sell homes knowing that he's selling himself short. That's another reason that's bad business. Another reason it's bad business is we also have in the minutes, and I confirm with the town administrator today, that when you look at all the numbers, we lose $800 a year. It costs us $800 a year per single family residence for all of our town services and all of our functions. 800 times 330, that's about $2.5 million a year. There goes the $3 million that this developer generously, and I'm not knocking this developer at all, but after the first year, then the taxpayers are picking up the tab. So if y'all want to pass this under these circumstances, go ahead. I'm asking for a deferral so we can discuss things, work some things out. I don't think this is the best deal the town of Mount Pleasant and its people can get.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Page. Stuart, you said a little while ago that the 1.5 was a basic estimate to connect Rifle Range Road to Billy Swales Boulevard.
That's correct. We had a contractor provide an estimate based on the knowledge he had. It was between 1.4 and 1.5.
And to your point, Paul, you know, Rifle Range Road is in such poor condition, or it's not in poor condition, but you know, it could certainly use some help, and that 1.5 to connect that would dissipate the traffic not only for this development, but for Oyster Point and the traffic in general. And it would send it to Billy Swales. So it would just give another avenue to be able to dissipate that traffic. The developer, you know, providing $1.5 million for this road to help the town with its traffic needs and concerns, I think is huge. I think it's unprecedented. So, you know, I appreciate what he's done as well, but I think that as a town we have to be responsible and you know, take into account what the potential loss is going forward. And I just don't believe that the town can afford to pass on a 1.5 plus the impact fees plus the taxes that this development is going to generate. I think, you know, with the 300 homes that are in there, there's a lot, I don't know if anybody, my colleagues have seen the plans very much, but there are a lot of unique sections in this development, you know, where you can actually buy and grow crops. And I think that's very unique and it's commendable to all involved for pulling this together. So I won't be able to support the deferral. I think this is the right project for this town at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. I have a motion and a second for deferral. The person I have signed up to speak is Mr. Gray Taylor.
Happy to answer any further questions.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bustos?
For clarification, I've heard this two ways. I've heard $1.5 million donation, and I've heard that 1.5 will build the road. Now, are y'all saying that the $1.5 million will build the road from Rifle Range Road to connect to Billy Swales?
We had a contractor's estimate, I think it's actually 1.1 to 1.4 million was his cost for a road. It has not been designed, he just came up with a cost. The cost, the development agreement is a contribution of the cash, 1.5 million.
Well, will y'all change that to say you're gonna build the road?
I think.
I mean, if 1.5, and you say it's gonna be between 1.4 and 1.5 to connect Rifle Range Road and Billy Swales Boulevard, why don't you just say we're gonna build the road?
I believe the answer is no. We are happy to make a very substantial contribution towards the construction of a road which has not yet been designed or the final alignment even determined. That's all we can do at this point in time, simply because of the planning process. We feel that's a very substantial contribution. We worked real hard with council members and with staff to reach something which would provide off-site traffic help to the town. And frankly, you know, it is somewhat unprecedented. And while it's a lot of money, you know, I think I said at the committee of council, I kind of wanted our own slide up there. Just was a big off-site contribution. It's a big off-site improvement. There are a lot of uncertainties about particulars of alignment, of the park design, things that are beyond our control at this point in time. So no, sir, we don't feel it's appropriate to commit to doing it. We are happy to make a big step in that direction, much like the traffic circle, because while there are problems with that road system and with related roads, we have to start somewhere. And we're doing things which are a first step, and we hope the town will continue to build on it.
Well, I think it's a misrepresentation then to say that this is gonna fix or help Rifle Range Road traffic. Because if you contribute $1.5 million and that doesn't connect to Billy Swales, we're still gonna have the problem on Rifle Range Road. Now, if you say you're gonna do it first, connect up there to Rifle Range Road, do segment 1 first, that's a different story. But a $1.5 million contribution is very generous. Don't get me wrong, that is generous, but it's not alleviating it.
Thank you. We have a motion for deferral and a second. Is there anyone that would like to speak on that again? I'd like to want to call for the vote. Mr. Smith?
Madam Mayor, thank you. Just a quick question. It was referenced earlier about bad business. Eric, could you give the number, if you recall, that the house at a certain price or below, we lose money? Because there's a number that's been thrown around that, what is that number?
Yeah, the house has to be valued around $800,000 to pay for the services it consumes.
So I just want to be on the record to say, I mean, we have an affordable task force committee. I don't think that $800,000 is an affordable home for most. So I wouldn't want to send a message out that it is bad business for our town to invest in services and fees for our residents who live in homes that are valued less than $800,000. So I don't support that that's a bad decision at all.
That's not what I said.
And I'm just going on the record for my comments.
That's
Sir,
not what I said.
I allowed you to speak and interrupt you. I just want to have my comments as well. Thank you. And I also understood that the business license assessment fee, that we're spending $75,000 on, staff made it very clear that there are legislative mandates that go into setting those fees. We're not at liberty to just pull fees up that we want to have. And I understood it to be that we may spend $75,000 and not be able to increase any of those fees to even compensate the value of the study that we're doing. So I just want to make sure that the facts remain the same. So again, I don't think that's bad business for the town as well. And with the widening of Highway 41, the timeline on that's been pushed back. And as I understand it, the longest portion of that timeline has to do with what's called a NEPA process, the environmental studies up front. And we cobbled together money as much as we could, and graciously the county stepped up and helped, made us whole to get that NEPA process whole. So if one deems $1.5 million to be a significant amount or not, does those same concepts apply to the creation of a road, the connecting road with the Long Point? A NEPA process has to be done. And my question would be, is it your understanding that a $1 million would at least wholly fund that process, which gets us one step closer to our transportation goals of interconnectivity within the town?
Yes, if we seek federal dollars, we will have to proceed with that process.
Thank you. And my final comment is I in no shape or way am trying to misquote anyone. I'm simply responding to what I heard. Thank you.
Okay, we have the motion and the second for deferral. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion fails.
Move to approve with all of staff's comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. We've had lots of comments. Are there any other comments moving forward?
I'll be making some at second reading.
Thank you. And we would anticipate to have the changes in hand by second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
And the motion passes.
First reading, ordinance number 16070, an ordinance providing for the adoption of a development agreement for change in the new development known as Palmetto Fort, located between Rifle Range Road and North Lakeshore Drive in a 6-mile community, and entitled to development agreement Palmetto Fort by and between PC Palmetto Investments LLC and the town of Mount Pleasant.
Thank you. Item number 11 is the first reading of an ordinance to temporarily suspend subdivision of properties in the old village of Old Mount Pleasant. Ms. Farrell?
Yes, this was as directed through Planning Committee and Council to develop language for a temporary suspension of lot subdivisions. So the text is on the screen, but I'll go through a few specifics with this. A couple of things to keep in mind. This would apply to any lot subdivisions that are not vested. We do have a few that have been approved by the Planning Commission, and so those would be vested and could move forward. If this is approved as written, once finalized, staff would not accept any more subdivision plats. Do want to make this clear that this is would apply to all subdivisions, so this is residential as well as commercial as written. We did incorporate a definition within this text amendment as to what does lot subdivision mean, because if you really use the definition that we already have on the code, just a lot line adjustment could constitute a subdivision. And just with the understanding of the purpose of this was to not create additional lots, new lots. We've provided a definition so that if there is somebody that needs simply a lot line adjustment or something, they could still proceed with that. You just cannot create additional lots. Let's see, a couple of other things. And then finally, it is, as written, it is tied in with the drainage study that you see just in italics there until the proposed drainage infrastructure study has been completed for the defined area, and so that would be the end date of the temporary suspension, and then also to just clarify the boundaries of the same that we've discussed all along: Coleman, Ben Sawyer, Intercoastal Waterway, Charleston Harbor, and then Shem Creek. So this will apply to all lot subdivisions within that area.
Move for first reading.
Madam Mayor, in honor of the
Hang on a minute.
Second.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now I have a motion and a second, and I have a comment. Mr. Carrier, question?
Just in honor of the personal property rights of our individuals and business property owners, I'll be voting no on this. As Mr. Gray Taylor stated so eloquently at the Planning Committee meeting, this has nothing to do with the drainage study. It's all about pushing back on personal property rights. And I hope our residents out there and business owners understand what's happening today as far as this and the next one on accessory dwelling units. This is an attack on your personal property rights, simply stated. And let me tell you, it's not going to end here. This council is bound and determined, the majority that rules it, to do in your personal property rights. And I will be voting no. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, sir. Mr. Hayes.
Mr. Carey, I strongly object to your
Thank you.
statement.
I appreciate that.
And I would like, I think Mr. Mahoney's here tonight. You know, in no other part of this town do we see where there was one dwelling, a property bought, one dwelling torn down, the lot divided into two, and then a house and two houses and two ADUs put up. So if the only property rights Mr. Carrier and his supporters are talking about is those who are investing, I think Mr. Mahoney and some other folks here today can point out some different property rights who, you know, what's wrong with the people who have lived in the old part of Mount Pleasant for years and years and years. And also remember, the old part of Mount Pleasant was not a modern subdivision when it was brought into the town. It doesn't have the drainage, it doesn't have the infrastructure, it doesn't have the modern grading that the new parts of town have. And if you see some of what happened after the storm, we got pictures from some folks who live in that part of town, you'll see why we need to do this.
Just a rebuttal. It has nothing to do with what you just said about property rights. Nothing, absolutely nothing. As usual, you don't say much about the point at task here. It's property rights I'm talking about. We have people out there who have personal property rights. You can't change that. It's the law. It's our ordinance. If you want to talk about having an assessment on drainage, have it. But we don't stop people from doing what they're legally can do.
Mr. Busto?
Well, as usual, Mr. Carrier, under the guise of property rights, is saying that he absolutely wants to support an increase in density and actually a loss of property rights because people are losing the use of their property because of drainage problems. They're losing it because of buildings that are put on these additional lots that cause a window to be right over someone's backyard. And that is a loss of the use of your property.
Wrong.
So, you know.
Wrong.
Well, you can say wrong, but it is. When you lose privacy, you lose the use of your property. And so this whole notion of property rights is, you know, you cloak yourself in that, and it's simply hogwash. It's not true. It's a guise that you use to increase density, and it's just wrong. You know, there are people almost daily who send emails talking about how in the old part of Mount Pleasant, their property is being drained, they're complaining, and our staff is having to go out and look at and referee people who are building up their lots so that the runoff goes into their neighbor. And even though those people are supposed to be responsible for their own drainage, that whole thing of, it's just like freedom of speech, but you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. So this whole nonsense of this is damaging property rights, that's not so.
It's not so.
No.
It's not. So you're anti-American. You're anti-American. No, you're anti-American. I understand that. I know your crowd is anti-American. I understand
Listen, I spent 24 years in the Army.
No,
what did you do?
Nothing.
What did you do?
I was a banker for 35 years.
Well, hey, there you go. No, I'm not.
You don't know anything about property rights by your actions, period.
Well, you are the excellent judge of that.
Absolutely.
Judge
making
Carrier
myself judge.
determines what is property rights and what is not.
Absolutely.
Well, at any rate, we have citizens whose property are being damaged by drainage, poor drainage. And I think we need to go in and fix that. And one of the things we need to do is reduce the number of lots, and this increase in density, although it's very stealthy, we need to stop that.
What does stealthy mean?
You don't know?
No, I don't know. Please tell me.
Look it up in the dictionary.
No, I mean, the council wants to know.
No, you want to know.
Well, I do, for the council.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm through.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I appreciate all y'all's comments. Joe, I told you I won't support this, and the reason I won't support it, it's not even property rights. If you want to talk about density and accessory dwelling units, let's talk about it. If you want to talk about accessory dwelling units and how they affect people's lives, let's talk about it comprehensively as a town that has 35,000 rooftops. Why do we isolate the old village? And drainage is an issue in Walkendale. Drainage is an issue in Harris Place, Neat Farm. I mean, drainage is an issue everywhere. I believe that if you really want to address it, it's easy. If you have an R1 lot, you can have an ADU. That would fix it. I think if you want to talk about subdivisions of lot, we subdivide lots every day, or at least monthly, in many neighborhoods. So I can't support it because if it's a problem, let's fix it. Let's not kick the can down the road. All you're doing is kicking the can down the road with an ordinance to stop something based on a drainage study that we might not be able to fund. So I see I'd like it to be a positive approach. I'd like it to do it together as a council with our great planning commission, and let's do it right, and let's have the conversation and be done with it. That's why I don't support it. Mr. Haney?
I'm just asking if anybody has seen any other part of town where there are tear downs, and there might be some others that are probably on this end of town, where people are buying homes, tearing them down, subdividing the lots, building 2 houses and 2 ADUs. We're not singling out the old village. We are looking at a problem. That's where the problem arises. We are responding to the problem. And there's been all this mischaracterization tonight of what people are saying, or who's an American and who's not. But, I've asked people in Park West, Councilman Smith, I don't think there have been any tear downs in Riverdale town lately on that side of town, or Carolina Park, or Dunes West. And so this is where the tear downs are happening. And this is where, because an ADU says you get 850 square feet and 25 feet of height, and then you can put a deck and a railing on top of that, you don't see that in other parts of town. So
The only ones that come to mind for me are 6 Mile, Rimley's Point, 8 Mile, 4 Mile, 10 Mile. I could go on, but that's it.
in the town limits where you are seeing people buy and tear down and building houses with ADUs.
Absolutely. We can go for a ride tomorrow. Absolutely. Be glad to show you the ones that I see as well.
Sure.
And they're not just in the old village. And there are other neighbors who have concerns about it. Mr. Smith?
Perhaps we should expand it.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Eric, first of all, let me be very clear. I think it's obvious that I won't be supporting this item or the next item, but I do have a couple of questions. When we look back, Eric, over the past 3 to 5 years, have there already been improvements to the storm water issues in the old village specifically at all?
Yes, sir.
So it's fair for me to say that the town of Mount Pleasant recognizes and has addressed some of the previous and outstanding stormwater issues.
We have conducted projects over the last few years in that area, yes.
And the $100,000 is not new. It's in our capital improvement plan that we approved for 2017 to 21, $100,000 study under this year for Old Village, it reads, Old Village Stormwater Assessment and Engineering. So that project is already identified in funding as part of an ongoing addressing of the issue that we already have been addressing. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when we have those findings from that report, what decisions will we have to make at that point? Will they include reprioritizing existing projects if new projects are founded? And we suspect there will be new projects found in the report. Is that correct? We'll have to reprioritize new projects identified in the study. Yes or no?
I would think so. What you have is, you have a CIP that is through 2021. It identifies a significant number of stormwater costs for maintenance and repair. There is $100,000 to conduct a study in the Old Village area. I'm hoping that's enough, because I think if we do the study, it should be comprehensive for the entire area, so we'd have a full picture of it. We will expect that study will deliver to us recommendations for improvements of both town-owned stormwater and what is mostly there, state-owned stormwater. In there, it'll list, we expect the report to list, prioritize projects that must be taken on by the town in order to improve the stormwater in the area. At that point in time, you'll have a list of what needs to be done to comprehensively improve the area. You know what your stormwater funding will be years out, and you'll have to make a decision how to prioritize or weave in those projects into your stormwater plans.
So there's the, currently under our stormwater section under the CIP, there is $20 million identified and prioritized and funded, correct?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
And we have already about $64 million of unfunded CIP projects also identified in our current plan.
Total capital, outside of everything.
Correct, $64 million.
That's right. Mhm.
And so before we identify new problems, they also are gonna come with a dollar amount associated with them. Is that fair for me to make that assumption?
I'd say so.
Which would be over and beyond the 64 million already unfunded.
Likely.
And in this plan, we have $600,000 allocated to the Pitt Street Business District currently and funded for stormwater improvements.
That is a current project.
And there's also $600,000 improvements to the Edwards Park in this current funded plan also.
Correct.
$1.2 million of funded, identified and funded projects for this area. I just don't understand, having said all of those, recognizing we have significant stormwater issues in the Old Village and in all parts of the town, including a funeral home on Rifle Range Road that I happen to be very familiar with, that I also drive to several times daily, including Rivertown area that has flooding that happens on the Parkway. How can we possibly make any connection to the results of this study to temporarily suspending lot subdivisions or ADUs? I don't get it, because in fact, I wrote it down because I don't want to be accused of misquoting or uncharacterizing someone. We have ordinance, this is a question, we have ordinances that regulate runoff on one's property if they improve it. They cannot just flippantly, it was used, supposed to be responsible for their runoff. That's not how our town works, is it? You're not supposed to be responsible for it. You are required to be responsible for the runoff on your property.
Correct.
And the emails that we have on projects that are ongoing, COs are not issued on those projects at this point. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Mr. Bremer?
Mr. Moore, yeah, a few more questions for you, please, sir. Before I ask you a question, some of the comments tonight have been sort of getting to people's motivations about their votes here, whether it's to increase density or whether it's property rights. I can tell you from my perspective, my motivation is simply this. I'm getting emails and calls from residents who are concerned about their property, about water on their property. So I want to be responsive to that in a reasonable way. Which leads me to having some questions regarding this study, which seems at the core of this ordinance. So a couple of questions, please, on the study. When was this study commissioned or approved to go forward?
We are in the process now of securing a consultant to do it. We sent out the, you recall, the RF.
Proposals.
proposals have come back, and we're evaluating them now.
Okay, so we're likely at the next Bids and Purchases Committee meeting, we will recommend the consultant to conduct the work.
When did council approve going forward with a study like this?
The budget that began July.
And was there a reason why this part of town was selected for this $100,000 investment?
Well, this was a decision of council. What I gathered during the budget deliberations was that here we have a large area of town serviced mostly by infrastructure that isn't ours, but yet is prone to flooding, has low-lying areas, and I believe, trying to speak for council, I believe the direction of council was that regardless of who owned the infrastructure, and regardless of some of the improvements that have been made by the town over time, that it was best for the community, the entire community, to get our full grasp of the comprehensive study of the area to determine what is there and what needs to be improved. That was the feeling of council, in my opinion.
Can I add something? Bob, when I was elected mayor, it was apparent that we had a lot of capital improvement projects that we talked about that weren't funded. So we had a millage increase for the first time in over 20 years. And that was to go towards funding some of this, not just studying it, but funding it, coming up with solutions. And there are solutions. We doubled our fees. We doubled the stormwater fee. I don't know that our stormwater fee is high enough now. I think instead of having a suspension based on a study, why don't we talk about assessments for those?
Well, let me get to that question then.
So we talked about that. That's where it came from.
Okay, but
We had already spent money in Snee Farm, millions. Jody, how much money did we spend in Snee Farm?
We have an SRS loan that we're applying for to spend millions. We're doing that study as we speak now.
Right, so going back to my questions then, I mean, was there a reason, Eric, as far as you know, was there a particular reason why council didn't say this is a town-wide problem and we should invest more money for a bigger study to address this comprehensively? Was there a reason why it was specific to this part of town at that time?
Yeah, the way it's historically come together, and please understand that when it comes to stormwater infrastructure in town, there are stormwater lines that have been in place for a long, long time where there exists no records of it. So it's not like a road system where you can see it and then you can measure it and judge its condition. There's things all over the place. So we started attacking stormwater infrastructure comprehensively, I want to say in the 2010, 2011 timeframe. And we did it by almost a little bit more technical than this, but a windshield assessment. It doesn't make sense because it's subterranean, but you know what I'm saying. A windshield assessment, if you will, of what we had in town and what we know we had in town. And it's probably accurate to a 75 percentile. And then after that, we started, and it gave us a general feel of where we are. And then after that, we prioritized what appeared to be, with your blessing, your direction, what appeared to be the most problematic areas around town. And then, once that was done, you have a study done for that particular area. Study's critical, it has to be done. By the way, you can't apply for state revolving funds without it. Nobody will give you money to do the job without something that says exactly what's there and what needs to be improved.
You have to assess the problem to know how to go forward.
So what rose up as some of the most highest priority areas? Snee Farm, of course. A lot of flooding problems. And then recently, council deemed the old Mount Pleasant, if you will, greater old Mount Pleasant area as another area that it warrants a more comprehensive study that will yield some solutions, some fixes.
So we're not ignoring the other parts of town, we're just eating the elephant one bite at a time.
Yes.
Okay. So the study, getting ready to bid, what's the projected time frame for the study to be completed?
They are submitting to us now how long it's going to take them to complete the project. In my experience, I think to do this right, the way it needs to be done, it's a 6 to 8 month type study. Okay. Because there is a lot of infrastructure, and you gotta keep in mind too, in this area of town, there are spots where the infrastructure is supposed to exist and doesn't. It's mostly state-owned, or it exists and it's completely caved in, doesn't work properly, and this is gonna take people on the ground digging up certain areas to really discover what's there and what isn't. It'll take time.
And so the product here of this study is for us to determine not only the scope of the problem, but perhaps prioritize problem areas within the study area?
Sure, it'll likely say, in order to fix the stormwater issue as much as it can be fixed, given its location to the ocean, that recommended are these projects. And attached to those projects will be a cost estimate for those projects. And then at that point in time, you'll have the information necessary for you to be able to say, okay, let's do this, 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 and this, and you'll know your full amount of revenue you expect over the next several years. And that's when you prioritize the projects that are recommended for the old Mount Pleasant area with other projects.
So is it fair to say that one expectation here would be that we may find that there may be some fixes for some problems that will be fairly small scale and less expensive, and then others that will be much more expensive that perhaps can't be done currently?
It's possible.
It's possible. Thank you. Based on that sort of information, I tend to support this because, number one, it's being responsive to our citizens' concerns. Number two, it's not a long-term thing. We're talking 6 to 8 months where we can gather information to determine. Maybe there's nothing that can be done in the near term based on the results of this study. At least we can tell our residents that with having the information in hand. Perhaps there are some smaller scale solutions for certain areas of the old village or the old Mount Pleasant that can be done. But without us having that information, it's going to be difficult for us to go into the CIP or the retreat, and maybe reprioritize projects. This certainly won't solve the problems down in that part of town, but for me personally, and my motivation here is to be able to tell the residents, listen, we're gathering information. Perhaps there's something we can do for your property. Perhaps there's not. But I think limiting the amount of impervious surface that we continue to create here, at least for 6 to 8 months, isn't the worst thing. And I don't think it's taking property rights. I think it's just kind of taking a breath for us to gather the information, like we're doing in City Farm or like we're doing in other parts of town. I'd love to do a comprehensive study of the town, but that's the whole elephant. And we're really not in a position to do the whole elephant right now. But this is a bite of that elephant that we can do manageably. And once we do this, we can take a look around town and say, here's another area that seems to be problematic, and do it that way. So, for me, I think this is a reasonable, balanced approach to gathering information, doing the assessment, and then determining what our actions are after that. So I'll be supporting it. I think it's a reasonable path to go. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion, a second. Oh, Mr. Owens? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bremer, you bring up a lot of great points. The old village, or the Indian village in particular, basically stormwater, Jody, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's very little infrastructure other than grades and swales. And it's very difficult to collect that stormwater and get it out of the area. In doing a study for a brief amount of time, 6 months, gives us an opportunity to use that as a model, not only for the Indian village or parts of the old village, but anywhere in town. And so I think it's prudent that we have to use this as a guide later on. I mean, we've got an opportunity to model this study and use it in other parts of the town. So it's not going to be a futile attempt to save portions of the Indian village. It's going to be comprehensive enough so that we can use this across the board to provide the service that we're being paid for by the citizens. There are a number of citizens, I get calls all the time, and they say, listen, we pay the fees, where are we getting our services? Where are our services? Some of the flooding that goes on in the old village and the flooding that goes on in the Indian village, these folks pay the same thing that I do, and they feel like they're, that they're not getting the full service of the town. And so to take a break and look at this study and look at the grades, do spot elevations, there's a lot that can be done. In fact, we do that already, do we not, Mr. Demora, that we take small pockets of the village or the Indian village, and we take spot elevations to see where we are because of the complaints that we receive. The study gives us an opportunity to give it more of a broad brush approach. That we can see exactly where our low-lying areas are, and we can put things in place to correct it. I think this is the right thing to do for our town, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
I
I'm
was
sorry.
just gonna say, could you restate the motion? We've had a heck of a lot of discussion here.
It was a motion to approve the ordinance as submitted.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure.
So I have a motion and a second. Now I have another comment.
Just one more comment. I mean, I'm not against the study. I think the study is well worthwhile, and I told Mr. Bustos that earlier. But as far as stopping subdivision of lots or stopping ADU construction on people who have made plans for such, that's wrong. And I'll stick to my point. It's against property rights issues with our residents, and I will not support this.
Thank you, Mr. Carrier. Mr. Rimmer?
Just a question, I'm confused on something. We talk about property rights and the ability to subdivide, but is that a true property right? Because don't they have to come to council to do that?
I think it's the way you look at it, Bob. And again, the reason I won't support it is if we want to fix these issues, let's fix them. If you have a property that's R1 zoning and it's over, you have to have, what, 10,000 square foot? So if you have a piece of property that's 21,000 square foot in the old village, so you could, and you are on a corner, so you can already be 2 lots. So you won't have the right now to do that until the study's done.
You don't have a right to do that anyway without the town's approval, correct?
No, that lot is subdividable if it's over, if you have a lot on the corner that's able to be subdivided, that is not a flag lot, that you can divide into 2 lots, you draw a line. And that's no council approval, you just come into staff, tell them your intent, and you have that right to do.
Like clarification.
So yes, that is taking away a property right, if you perceive it as that. I forgot I also have, before we call for the vote, we have people sign up to speak. Did you have a comment, Ms. Farrell? No? Okay.
Patrick Arnold. He left. Larry Mahorny.
Hi, Larry Mahorny, 749 McCants Drive. I'd like to start saying I'm grateful to the town council for finally looking at this issue of subdividing and building in the Indian Village. Most of you are aware by now, I live right next door to the subdivision. Very large homes, related outbuildings on the corner of McCants and Pocahontas. We live on the low side of McCants. Runoff from the road's always been an issue. The developers of the 2 houses on the corner have now backfilled their lots, thus elevating them and ensuring their investments stay high and dry. The owners of the 3rd, so far undeveloped lot, will have no choice but to do the same, pushing all the runoff basically right straight onto our property. Where's my property rights? After Matthew, we had 5 to 6 inches of standing water in our backyard. I'd like to know what the town plans to do to protect my property, my family, and my investment. At least with the freeze, there's others that won't have to face the consequences that we are facing. Thank you.
Larry, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can I ask, when you built your accessory dwelling unit, did you put in additional drainage to protect the neighbors? It was required, correct?
Ms. Page, we went through every hurdle, permit, survey, submittal. We did everything by the book, man.
Right.
There's no place for our water to go because there is no infrastructure in place. We did everything we were required to do. Our contractor did everything he was required to do. We've had water in our backyard, but what's coming next is gonna cause me a flood.
Madam Mayor.
It's gonna cost $110,000. The money we just did put into our drilling where I live. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Kirch?
The units that are being built next to him, do we know, have they been issued COs yet?
No, they're under construction.
So they have to get a CO, and once they get a CO, they have to prove that they're managing their stormwater. They cannot send it to someone else. They are legally responsible for it. And that gentleman there has recourse.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Sir, those houses are built, finished, people get in those houses, and it's still continuing, you please contact me. Because I'll come down there first and do everything I can to help you, because you have recourse for people sending their stormwater to your property.
I appreciate that. We were trying to be proactive and not have to get into civil litigation.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue? Mr. Taylor? Thank you. You have your 2 minutes.
Gray Taylor, 805 Post Oak Drive. I want to say something positive first, please. I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank Mr. Smith. I want to thank Mr. Garrich. Those are just the three that I know of for the job y'all did during the hurricane of communicating with town citizens. I'm sure, I'm not saying others didn't do the same. Those are just the three that I saw the most from, and I do appreciate it. It was much, you had other things to be doing. You didn't have to do it when you were doing it. On Saturday, I took a bike ride around the area that's the subject of this regulation right here. And I made a conscious effort to ride up and down every single street in that area. And it took me a while because wind was blowing hard. And I want to tell you that the drainage system works. It's not perfect, but the places where I saw standing water on a public right-of-way, I can count them on one hand. And they're the same places that you see standing water after a thunderstorm. Cooper Estates didn't look so good. I heard a couple other neighborhoods didn't look so good. I personally saw Mr. Smith's business. It didn't look so good. The pictures he showed from his neighborhood didn't look so good. One thing all of you have agreed on is that this is an infrastructure problem. This is not a rooftop problem or a subdivision lot problem. It's an infrastructure problem. So let's call this what it is. This is a pet project from some folks in the old village who put a lot of money towards an election campaign and successfully got some seats on council. Great, that's the American way. But if you want to have a straight up and down vote on ADUs or a straight up and down vote on whether you can subdivide a lot, that is great. That's what we're all about. We can talk about it, but let's not call it something that it isn't. Again, the drainage system may not be perfect, but as you've all agreed, and as you heard Mr. DeMora say, it's an infrastructure problem. Let's call it what it is. Let's not spend town staff's time and town money on something other than what it actually is. If they're infrastructure problems, let's fix them. But this is not the only area.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah. May I ask the speaker a question?
Certainly.
Mr. Taylor, may I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Are you leaving us the impression that increased impervious surface does not add to runoff? That's counter to everything I've known from the time I ran the Low Country Open Land Trust and we dealt with impervious surface.
Well, I'm sorry, that's a fine question, but
called hydrology.
he's not an engineer.
No, but he spoke.
I was saying
Never
he's
mind,
not an
never
engineer.
mind.
I mean,
Never mind, Mayor, please.
I don't know how.
Never mind.
I don't know how to turn
I
it
withdraw the
into
question.
The same offer that I made to Mr. Bustos right after he was elected. We have a drainage problem in Coleman in front of my office. And I asked Mr. Bustos to come meet me in my office and look at it because I wanted him to see firsthand why we needed the Coleman Boulevard improvements. I'd love for both of you to come. Still haven't got Mr. Bustos out there, but I'd love for both of you to come. We'll talk about it and we'll see if we can come up with something we agree on.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Kevin Kinane, 3032 River Vista Way. I live nowhere near the old village. I want to thank Bob Brimmer, who also doesn't live near the old village, for recognizing that there's more to property rights than this hypothetical property right. There's a gentleman sitting there, came up and spoke, his house is flooded. He wants answers. He can't rebuild the infrastructure. He has a right to his property rights as much as anyone else. And I'd also like just quickly to thank Joe Bustos. Thank you for your service in the United States Army and as a police officer. and for sticking your neck out for many years so that we can disagree. And you're quite an excellent American, sir. Thank you.
My name is Brian Maiden, resident of a historically registered property at 107 Bennett Street in Old Village. I just have a couple comments. I'm really here to talk about the next agenda item, but I think some of my comments and challenges apply to both. So the main thing is I would like council and all town staff to approach things as I have to as a citizen. So I've been involved in projects in the Old Village where an accusation by a neighbor shut my construction project down until I could prove without a shadow of a doubt that I could handle my water. In challenge, you know, a year later, I have video of water streaming down the road and entering my property, going across storm drains and coming into my property. Did I get the same response? No, it was a long 18-month battle to realize that the storm drains were really just cavities. They weren't tied into a system. I mean, I assume these are the things that we're gonna find in this study. But again, you know, please approach these things like I would have to as a citizen. So my main challenge with this one is it's an undefined term. You know, if it's that big of a priority for the town, please expedite the study and put a limit on the term of this or the next agenda item. And then again, I'll just go ahead and take my extra time so I don't have to come back up here again. But the accessory dwelling unit, if the root cause truly is pervious versus impervious surface, let's make it about that. You know, I live in a historic property that didn't have plumbing or a kitchen when it was erected. I would prefer, if something, I don't have a bedroom on the ground floor, I would prefer for me or my in-laws or my mother, if something happened, to build an accessory dwelling unit and protect my historic property. It would be more preservation to do that. But if my hand is forced, I'll file the permit. I mean, it's gonna take 2 months to get a permit in this town anyways right now. So the 2 months versus 6 months, if we expedite the process, isn't that big of a difference. So again, I think it's in the interest of preservation of historic properties to actually have accessory dwelling units, provided that your lot square footage and the footprint of your house meets those guidelines. And that'd be my last comment. I don't know, but if I want to change something in the Old Village specifically, those guidelines, there's a process involved in that. So I'm worried that we're using a moratorium to accomplish a longer-term goal, which is amending those guidelines that are passed through state preservation, a lot of process. So please don't shortcut this. I wouldn't be allowed to as a citizen. That's it.
Thank you very much. No one else to speak on this? I have a motion and a second for approval. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brimmer?
Aye.
Mr. Brimmer votes yes. Mr. Bustos?
Aye.
Mr. Bustos votes yes. Mr. Carrier?
No.
Mr. Carrier votes no. Mr. Garch?
No.
Mr. Garch votes no. Mr. Haney?
Aye.
Mr. Haney votes yes. Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Mr. Owens votes yes. Mr. Santos?
Aye.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Mr. Smith?
Nay.
Mr. Smith votes no. Mayor Page?
No.
Mayor Page votes no.
First reading, of ordinance number 16092, an ordinance to amend chapter 155 of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances, providing for a temporary suspension of approval for the subdivision of property in the area commonly known as the Old Village and Old Mount Pleasant.
Thank you. Item number 12 is very similar to this. It's just the ordinance. I think we've probably had all the conversation. What's the nature?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Brimmer?
Aye.
Mr. Brimmer votes yes. Mr. Bustos?
Aye.
Mr. Bustos votes yes. Mr. Carrier?
No.
Mr. Carrier votes no. Mr. Garch?
No.
Mr. Garch votes no. Mr. Haney?
Aye.
Mr. Haney votes yes. Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Mr. Owens votes yes. Mr. Santos?
Aye.
Mr. Santos votes yes. Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Smith votes no. Mayor Page?
No.
First reading, ordinance number 16093, an ordinance to amend chapter 156 of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances, providing for a temporary suspension of approval for accessory dwelling units in the area commonly known as the Old Village and Old Mount Pleasant.
I Item number 13 is to change the wetland requirement in open space or county wetlands in open space. What's the?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
First reading ordinance number 16094, an ordinance to amend various sections of chapters 155 and 156 of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances pertaining to wetland property as it relates to the calculation of required open space.
Item number 14 is an ordinance amendment taking us to the International Property Maintenance Code.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
First reading ordinance number 16095, an ordinance to amend the Town of Mount Pleasant Code of 7, Tribute Court and Rice Fields and Bulls Bay, identified by TMS number 632-0000110, and depicted as Lot 30 in Phase 2, and a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book EG, page 763.
Item number 16 is another annexation. This is Darrell Creek
Motion
Plantation.
approved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any conversation, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
First reading ordinance number 16097, an ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately .6 acre tract of land located at 3713 Station Point Court in Darrell Creek Plantation, formerly known as River Station, identified by TMS number 59608000035, and depicted as Lot 33, Block A, and a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Plat Book EA, page 86.
Item number 17 is the first reading of an ordinance providing for amendment to the Dunes West A Plan Development District Ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions?
And Mayor, I'd like to, as part of that, include the pending ordinance doctrine. Attached to that, please.
Mr. Pagarini?
That's part of your motion.
I'll amend my second to reflect the same.
So we have a motion and a second, and you want to invoke the pending ordinance doctrine. Any other conversation or questions from council? We do have speakers signed up, so if there's nothing from council, I'll open it to the floor.
Chairman Walker.
Mr. Walker, welcome. You know the routine?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Page. And thank you, council. It's been a long evening. I'm Truman Walker here on behalf of Pulte Homes, which is the developer of Dunes West, not Park West. And I'm here for a simple request. I'm here to ask that you defer this until next meeting. And the reason is also simple. As owner of the property, we did not receive the proposed ordinance at all. It wasn't part of the meeting packet for the planning committee meeting. We've only gotten it as a result of a forwarded email after the planning committee meeting. And as Councilman Haney said, we really only had 24 real working hours with this. And since it is property that we own, we'd like time to deal with it. But more important, we think we can reach a solution if we have time to meet with staff. The way the ordinance is written, it would refer to a land use map that's not yet complete, if you've seen it. And one of the arguments in favor of this is there needs to be a valid land use map. And the way 3.03 is written, in the amendments to the ordinance, it would refer to a land use map that's not completed. We think that we can get together with staff for Dunes West, agree on the rest of what will be there in terms of the uses on those particular parcels. We intend to not, by any means, come close to the cap. We'd ask to be part of the solution here, and we think we can actually accomplish a solution over the next 30 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Kevin Steelman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Kevin Steelman, Park West Development, 3301 Salterbeck. I would echo Mr. Walker's comments. It is my understanding that this first reading is really more of a draft form, that the ordinance, it's not intended to be adopted in its current form, and that the town would use time between now and a final reading to refine it. However, with that said, we have done a very preliminary review. We've expressed our concerns and comments to the town staff and the legal on some issues that left out to us, again, from our cursory review. Specifically, we had a couple projects or pieces of property we own that had been reclassified to conservation open space, which would be of great concern that in our view would be a taking of our property if those weren't corrected before a final reading. I did identify those parcels specifically for staff and legal as well. But we would concur with Mr. Walker that we request a deferral of this vote to allow time for input from all the stakeholders, primarily ourselves as developers of Park West, and Pulte as the master developer now with Dunes West. So we appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All of signed up.
I would ask Mr. Pagliarini if you could maybe summarize what happens going forward if this passes tonight in terms of how things operate for both Dunes West and Park West under the current, after the first reading.
Right, it is first reading, it's not final approval at second reading. Until that time, let's understand there are changes to both the text of the ordinance regarding the procedure that clarifies the procedure to determine zoning districts or zoning designations for each parcel. The map is the second part about it, second part that's required in a PDD, which will be brought current in accordance with state law. So at least as the motion's been made pending ordinance, what, in my opinion, is that if there is a change or clarification needed on any zoning issue, first go to the planning department, and it may be that a request to council is made. So I want to be clear, we're not stopping or halting anything at this point, but if clarification is needed, it would be likely that that request would have to come before council.
So those zoning requests could still come forward?
Yes, sir.
During that time?
Yes, sir.
I do appreciate Mr. Walker's comments. I personally very interested in having a lot of discussion and input from the property owners and from developers and for all the parties and the community. I think we all need to kind of have a chance to be able to talk about the challenges and opportunities that this affords us going forward. And we have plenty of time to do that. We've got months to be able to craft this the way it makes most sense for the community. So Mr. Steelman and Mr. Walker and others, I hope that you will avail yourselves of the opportunity to be involved in those discussions as we go forward.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. Any other comments or conversations?
For what? For approval or deferral?
Approval with pending doctrine, pending ordinance doctrine. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the ayes have it.
First reading, ordinance number 16098, an ordinance providing for an amendment to the Dunes West A Plan Development District ordinance.
Moving into old business, number one is an annexation of Palmetto Fort.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the ayes have it.
Final reading, ordinance number 16072, an ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately 2.65 acre tract of land located at 1536 Mathis Ferry Road, identified by TMS number 55900000083, and depicted on the plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC office in Book L12, page 64.
2, 3, and 4 all have to do with the school properties. So these are, first one is a rezoning on
Move for
Whipple Road.
approval.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the ayes have it.
2, 3, and 4.
Was that all?
Is that for all of them?
Yes, 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
Final reading, ordinance number 16073, an ordinance to rezone from R1 Low Density Residential District to PI1, Public Institutional 1 District, an approximately 45.62 acre tract of land comprised of 3 parcels located at 1560 Mathis Ferry Road, 946 Whipple Road, and 950 Whipple Road. Identified by TMS numbers 55900000081, 55800000176, 55800000188 respectively, and depicted in the plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC office in Plat Book L, page 153, Book AD, page 71, and Book W, page 96. Final reading, ordinance number 16074, an ordinance to amend the Town of Mount Pleasant building height plan map pertaining to an approximately 45.62 acre tract of land comprised of 3 parcels located at 1560 Mathis Ferry Road, 946 Whipple Road, and 950 Whipple Road, identified by TMS numbers 559-0000081, 558-0000176, and 558-0000188 respectively, and depicted on a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Plat Book L, page 153, Book AD, page 71, and Book W, page 96, by increasing the maximum building height from 35 feet to 55 feet. Final reading, ordinance number 16075, an ordinance to rezone from R1 low density residential district to PI1 public institutional 1 district, an approximately 6.16 acre tract of land located on Whipple Road near its intersection with Mathis Ferry Road, identified by TMS number 559-0000095, known as the Town of Mount Pleasant Baseball Field, and depicted on the plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book L12, page 64.
And I believe the chairman of our education committee has a comment.
Mr. DeMore, after you read all that, are you just trying to tell us a new high school is coming?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 5 is ordinance to, final reading on ordinance to rezone a piece of property at Royal Avenue.
Move for approval.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
2 nays.
Final reading, ordinance number 16076, an ordinance to rezone from R1 low density residential district to R2 low density residential district, and property to remain in the SR2 OD special R2 overlay district, an approximately 0.27 acre tract of land located at 804 Royal Avenue, identified by TMS number 532-0900101, and depicted on the plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book AX, page 22.
Thank you. Item number 6 is a final reading on a piece of property at the First Baptist Church to change the zoning to PI1.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Final reading, ordinance number 16077, ordinance to rezone from First Baptist Church North PBMUSR Plan Development Mixed Use Suburban Rural District to PI1, Public Institutional 1 District, and AB Area-Wide Business District, and approximately 19.75 acre tract of land located at 1151 George Broward Boulevard, identified by TMS number 598-0000007, and depicted on the plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book L15, page 96.
Item number 7 is a final reading on an annexation.
Move for approval 7, 8, 9, 10.
Second.
Annexation.
I have a motion and a second for all the annexations. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
Final reading, ordinance number 16078, an ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately 1 acre tract of land located at 446 Commonwealth Road in Darrell Creek Plantation, identified by TMS number 596080010, and depicted as Lot 10, Block A, FNA River Station, and shown in the plot recorded by the Charleston County MC Office in Book EA, page 86. Final reading, ordinance number 16079, ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately 1.47 acre tract of land located on Bulls Bay Boulevard and Rice Fields at Bulls Bay, identified by TMS number 632000140, and depicted as Lot 60 in Phase 3 on a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book EA, page 45. Final reading, ordinance number 16080, an ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately 1.92 acre tract of land located at 845 Bulls Bay Boulevard and Rice Fields at Bulls Bay, identified by TMS number 632-0000137, and depicted as Lot 57 in Phase 3 on a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book EH, page 45. Final reading, ordinance number 16081, an ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately 1.02 acre tract of land located on True Blue Court in Rice Fields at Bulls Bay, identified by TMS number 632-0000114, and depicted as Lot 34 on a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Book EG, page 111.
Eric, I got a big auction on Saturday, start at 9:30. Item number 11 is the final reading of an ordinance to amend the land development regulations.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
Final reading, ordinance number 16082, an ordinance to amend the Town of Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155 Land Development Regulations, and Chapter 156 Zoning Code, as described herein and in Exhibits A and B, all pertaining to changes in definitions, submittal process, and tree mitigation requirements.
Item number 12 is the final reading on a building plan and
Move
reviews.
for approval. Third party.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for third-party review. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have
Final
it.
reading, ordinance number 16083, an ordinance to amend subparagraph 11 of paragraph A of section 150.002 of chapter 150 of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances, providing for third-party plan review of building plans and fees therewith.
And the final, number 13 is the final reading of another change that will be pertaining to design review board and buffer yards.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
You guys have it.
Final reading, ordinance number 16084, an ordinance to amend the Town of Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances, Chapter 156 zoning code as described herein. In Exhibit A, pertaining to changes in the Design Review Board approval of buffer yard plantings.
Item number 14 is an ordinance to amend the pertaining to tree protection. I'll have to say that the people probably don't like trees as much this week as they did last week. But all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the ayes have it.
Final reading, ordinance number 16085, an ordinance to amend section 156.230 through 156.230 of chapter 156 of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances pertaining to tree protection.
If you have a committee report that does not require action, I would ask that in the, so we're running so late, please turn it over to the clerk for the record.
Well, Madam Mayor, we spent a bunch of money in bids and purchases. Do you want me to say something or no? I don't care. I mean,
No, sir, only if you have an action item. Is there any action on your committee report?
we don't have to have action on bids and purchases. Thank you very much.
We have a deferral.
I believe we have some action on water supply. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a report that I have submitted to you and a resolution that I believe is later in our agenda. Is that
Yes.
under council new business? So we'll wait for that.
Thank you. Administrator's report, Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. Just as a reminder, Children's Day, Sunday, 12 to 5. We will be ready.
Is it already Children's Day this Sunday?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy. Okay, council.
Chamber of Commerce is not coming, are they? No, I'm just kidding.
No, but let's hope not. So anyway, under new
That was
business,
cold.
item number 1, Mark, this is you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I had to do that.
Move for approval of the first reading for the ordinance to amend the Town of Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinance regarding the water and sewer as described in Exhibit 8.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the ayes have
First
it.
reading, ordinance number 16099, ordinance to amend the Town of Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances, Chapter 51, Water and Sewers, as described herein in Exhibit A, pertaining to the restricted discharges in Code Section 50.115A.
Item number 2, Mark, this
Thank
is
you,
you.
Madam Mayor. A resolution in support of the request of South Carolina DHEC to require alternatives for groundwater withdrawal permit submitted by Maguru Enterprises, which is Google, as submitted in the resolution.
Before we vote on this, though, I would just like to give us the number that they take per day now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. They're currently,
And what they're asking for.
They're currently authorized to withdraw from the aquifer 5 million gallons, 500,000 gallons per day. And the new application is to increase 500,000 to 1.5 million, 3 times the current amount.
Per day of artisanal water,
This is 1,000-year-old water.
1,000-year-old
Pure
ancestral
drinking
water. I saw Mr. Bremer first. Mr. Bremer?
I mean, those are obviously very big numbers, Mark, but does Mount Pleasant Water have an official position on this request? Have they made that known? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, sir. May I hear Gar's question so I can
Yes,
catch
go-
them both
go
at the
get
same
them
time?
Very similar.
Yeah, go ahead.
Very similar. I take it this permit is in process now with DHEC. So DHEC right now has been clear. They adamantly oppose this, or they haven't responded yet.
Thank you. I'll answer both. The application is in the process. The public comment period is over. Mount Pleasant Waterworks' official position is in opposition of that and submitted that in writing before the public comment process ended. And we are submitting our resolution post-public comment period. However, we want to be on the record. And we are collaborating with our friends with the Coastal Conservation League who attended our water supply meeting. And they are also communicating with DHEC. It is unfortunate that DHEC will have to follow their current ordinances in allowing permits to be withdrawn. So the reality is, even though we're publicly against the use of 1,000-year-old water to cool a server farm for Google, we are not anti-business by no stretch of the imagination, but there are several options for them to use. Reclaimed water, surface water, and we simply want them to do just as they've done across the line in Georgia with using reclaimed water. And there's options for them to have, and we just want to make sure Google continues to be the good environmentally friendly company that they build themselves out to be, that we know them to be, and not tap into that 1,000-year-old water. And I'd be remiss if I didn't comment, Councilman Santos also talked about some options for reverse osmosis. We know that we do that. It is a more costly option, but we have in Mr. Councilman Santos' words, we have an unlimited supply of water just off our coast here that we can tap into, in addition to the surface water, in addition to the reclaimed water process. They could use gray or black water. The computers don't care what color the water is. They just want to be cool.
Maybe they could use some of that water out of the old village. Mr. Garch?
So Mark, is listening to you, does DHEC have enough of a hammer to stop this, or they have to adhere to the laws that restrict them from hammering this?
Excellent question, and I think that becomes the bigger fish that we need to focus on rather than this permit, is that unfortunately there is no legislation currently in place that allows for the prioritization of permits being issued from for DHEC to follow. The staff in place has to follow the current ordinances, which is why we're probably going to see, realistically, we don't know that, but realistically, probably that permit's going to be issued. But let's collaborate and cooperate together and focus on a legislative change in Columbia, and hopefully those folks read our minutes and get that message loud and clear.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work on this, Mr. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
Resolution 16101.
Excuse me, who was the second one?
Who was the second for that?
I was.
Jim.
Someone was. Item number 3, Mr. Moore, is an ordinance authorizing sublease of property known as Trident Academy Gym.
That's correct, Mayor. You may have seen the communication about us entering into an agreement with Cainhoy Athletic Club. For 2 years at $13,600 a year for the use of the gym, plugs the hole for us until we get this gym.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? I have one question for Mr. Ayub. You're covered, Mr. Ayub. This gets you through to the new gym?
Yes, ma'am. It will help us get through the loss of the town hall gym under construction. And it puts us at a pretty level right now. Once the new town hall gym is built, we get out of the ways we tried, and we'll be right where we're at now.
And you're comfortable with the fees as far as how our uses are and the amount of use we get for the property?
Yes, ma'am. This is where it goes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
First reading ordinance number 16100, an ordinance authorizing a sublease of property known as the Trident Academy Gymnasium to the town of Mount Pleasant.
Item number B, old business, final reading. I believe we want to give some property back to the DOT.
Yes, ma'am, as well.
Okay, yeah, we're glad to give them stuff back.
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
He's got to read that before we go into
Yeah.
executive session. I have a question.
Ordinance 16086, an ordinance authorizing the transfer of title to surplus right-of-way to the South Carolina Department of Transportation related to the U.S. Highway 17 Mark Clark Expressway project.
Mr. Garch?
Thank you. I meant to ask this on the administrative report. Eric, we have an ordinance on the books for construction sites with a pending storm such as a hurricane, on things they're supposed to do.
We really don't. I know there were some concerns raised. We went and checked, and we really don't have one, sir.
Okay, well, I can tell you that I looked at a large construction site where nothing was done. There was, if we had had sustained hurricane force winds, which we didn't, there would have been a lot of issues. And this site was right there on Rifle Range Road, near a lot of people,
So perhaps you could put that on the police legal judicial committee for further action.
I think I'm talking to the chair now, and she'd be a good idea if she'd put that on.
It's taken care of.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I mean, Paul, you bring up a great point. I mean, there were several construction sites, but they should be governed by the SWIP. They should be governed by stormwater prevention plans. And so I think the town can hang its hat on going back to the contractors and, forcing their hand under that provision. They've got to keep their sites clean. They've got to make accommodations for debris. They've got a number of things that they've got to do to meet criteria within that SWIP. And it was obvious from pictures I sent to you, the same project as Paul's talking about, several other projects in the area that let their debris go. So it's something I think we need to take a look at, and maybe our inspectors can take a look at them and inform them of some of the violations they may have incurred.
Thank you. We have a need to go into executive session. We had an item earlier, which was the discussion of the lawsuit with Park West. Now we have consideration of appointments to the planning commission. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? And the ayes have it. Come on, let's finish this up. Miller.